So you just destroyed my body as being a gift to me from the Creator.
My friend thinks it's a prison.
Anything I born into a delusion.
Anything I create is a fractal of my delusion.
Johnny, your body is a gift to everybody.
Thank you.
That beard
like
is
mine.
sure, that beard.
I've got lots of gravity mass here.
Yeah, we can just move forward from that. Yeah, we're good.
All right. Do you think that was funny? That was a funny moment.
Yeah.
That was a moment from our interview with Lou Elizondo, and I thought that was awesome. You might not have been able to hear it, and it's a bad intro, but I thought it was funny. And it's your intro, Brad.
Thank you.
We are here with Brad Voorhees and Alexei. I'm sorry, Alexei. I just talked to my son Alex on the phone today.
I started using that, calling customers. Hey, Alex. It just makes life easier.
Well, I gotta go. I'm gonna go pick up Alex in the morning. We eat breakfast on we go to Starbucks on Sunday mornings. We get coffee, and I just talked to him. Anyway, how you doing, Brad? I'm
pretty good.
I'm still stoked. I'm still stoked from our last get together.
Yeah, I mean that was a great time. That was a really great time. And I think we didn't quite. We got really hung up on the holographic universe, and we didn't get to anti-gravity. I don't think
that's what it was. I don't think we got hung up on it. You were trying to explain it to me and ask Alexei how many months I've had to try to absorb his stuff.
We orbit the center of time, Artisan. I'm telling you.
And I never have disputed any of it.
I know.
I can't absorb all the theories at once. I have to let them sink in. But what's funny about gravity is, we're told our whole lives that it's not a force, right? Well, I guess I would. How many years has it been? Remember the whole fuss about whether gravity was a force or not back, what was it, 10, 15 years ago? Or is that just me, or has it always been a thing? Right.
You always hear about the force of gravity, but gravity, I think, is actually an applied acceleration, which is it's subtly different, right? Because, Newton, right? Was it Newton's first law is force equals mass times acceleration.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a force of gravity that you could say, which would be the acceleration due to gravity times your mass, right? Because force is mass times acceleration,
which is ultimately weight.
Yeah, or force.
Yeah.
It's how we express weight, right?
Yep.
Force times mass.
But I think gravity is actually an applied acceleration, which is it's just kind of weird. But
I remember when I first started hearing that it wasn't a force, because I always thought it was since I was a child. I guess I would say, well, to me it's a proxy force, right? If gravity can affect space-time, if it has an effect, how can it not have a cause? I guess I don't know. No matter how much I read or try to study, I don't get how it's. I guess to me, when we look at things on the quantum level, we talk about positive charge, negative charge, right? We have all this stuff that builds up to be matter, and then once it gets to be matter, we say gravity is not a force. Right? Everything that makes gravity is based on forces, right? Right. But
it's energy.
The effect that gravity has on space-time is not a force.
It's the potential, right? Because it's a flow. It's an accelerative action. That's why I always go to the river of fluid, because gravity is constantly flowing through us in a direction, right? So it's like an invisible river.
Yeah, well, I think Einstein, has pretty much established for everyone that gravity arises from energy in space, like energy bends space-time, right? That's the energy bends, so say you have some mass, right, which is the same as energy, because E equals mc squared. I don't know if you can hear those dogs, but E equals, oh, maybe it's yours. Okay, so E equals mc squared, right? So energy equals this mass times the speed of light squared. That's how much energy there is. But energy in the presence of space-time deflects space-time, makes it dip. And so if you're here, you get that applied acceleration.
Right. But it causes. Uh-oh, you went muted there for a second. Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I was screaming at my son to
okay.
Shut up.
Okay. No, I have some dogs that come and visit me from a half mile away, the neighbor's house, and I thought that was them outside. That's kind of funny. But yeah, so to me, if we weren't talking about forces, space time would just, it would be like dark matter or something. It would just flow right through space time, right?
Well, so now if we bring it back to what I call the Rosetta Stone of the universe and the sonic gravity theory of everything. So if you're on the surface of this 2D hologram, like you see the images of, like, when Einstein says, the energy bends space-time, and it's that dip that's the gravity that causes things to roll towards other things. Well, now if you think of the surface, the 2D, which is like, one dimension, like two-dimensional, right? Like a plane.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now let's look at it. If it's straight up and down, right? Now, if gravity is tension in the Higgs string, like I think, and if the Higgs string or the Higgs field is leashing the energy to the surface of space-time, essentially maintaining constant mass energy on the hologram, right? Because there's a law of conservation of mass energy. So if it's the Higgs field that's leashing this oscillating matter and energy to the surface of the hologram, well, now if you think of, like, here's the hologram, and then so there's like a leash, like an anchor point in the middle, and it's spinning around this anchor point. Well, now the more energy you have spinning around that anchor point is going to cause tension on that leash, tension on the Higgs string. And so you can kind of imagine it bending space-time. It's deflecting space-time as it's going around. So the more energy you have in space, it's very ontologically, like, this is my unification of quantum mechanics or quantum field theory and general relativity, because the surface of the hologram is the surface of space-time. And the surface of, you could peel the surface of the hologram off and hang it like a sheet. And that's the state of the energy at one instant in time in the universe. And so, and it's constant, right? It's like from this time to the next time to the next time to the next time, right? Like you could essentially think of the surface of the hologram as the TV picture. And in one instant, that's the state of the energy in the universe at that moment. And so then every single instant becomes sort of like a movie, right? Like a film. Like, remember old school film movie reels where there was like little frames, and they just went through, and it looked like it's moving, right? So now it's all like digital and shit, but anyway, but if you chopped all those,
though, right?
Yeah, but if you chopped all those
even
frames
digital
out,
images are just video is just digital images pasted together, right?
Yeah.
So what's the frame rate of the universe?
Frame rate, yeah.
Frame speed of light. I mean, like Planck time equals.
That
Planck.
would be the what's it called? The actual processing speed would be.
Like,
speed of light.
60 frames per second or whatever is the speed of light. Yeah. And then a Planck. How many Planck times there are, distance
there you
there
go.
are in the.
So you're saying Planck scale would be the pixelation of the universe.
Yeah. So yeah. I mean, I think you could say that. I mean, I think there's got to be I think the natural. I think at the Planck scale, right? The Planck length equals the Planck time equals it's all the same, right? It's all somehow
they're
it's
all
equal.
Intertwined. Yeah, Planck scale, Planck length, and speed of light. Totally.
Yeah. So I think that's kind of the natural unit, but that's the increment. And so if you chop out all those frames and you stack them from like the beginning of time, right? The Big Bang all the way out, to the end of time. Now the distance across now I call these slices of cheese, right? The frames of the movie, the surface of the black hole when it's peeled off and hung, and and they just stacked like this, right? I call them like slices of cheese. Now the distance across those slices of cheese is time-like, right? From the beginning of time to the end of time. Now you've heard of time dilation, right? You've heard of time dilation. Like when you speed up, like your time slows down, right?
Relative to
And
another
so-
observer. Yeah.
Yep. And so at the speed of light, time stops for light, right? It stops. And so now if you
That's
but
where
if
the
you're going
speed of
slower,
light matches the acceleration rate of a photon.
well, photon's constant speed, right? It doesn't accelerate.
It goes from 0 to the speed of light instantaneously.
Okay. Yeah, but it only goes at the speed of light, right? It only goes at I'm pretty sure.
From what I
And so-
understand, yes, yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so when you have but you can think of these sort of slices of cheese, right? Now, time dilation is when your time slows down or speeds up. Like, so if it's, if like you're in your car, right? Should we just talk about this real quick? So imagine, okay, well, let's do the photon clock, right? It's like Einstein's photon clock experiment. I don't know if it's Einstein's or somebody else's, but say you have like a clock, right? And so here's the clock. Here's the surface of the clock. It's like you're looking down on the clock and it's sitting on a cylinder. And the cylinder goes like this. And there's a bottom plate and a top plate. Now there's a photon. And a photon goes the speed of light, and the speed of light never changes. And it goes down and it comes up and it hits the clock. And that's when the little thing ticks, right? And so it keeps perfect time because the speed of light never changes, right? That makes sense?
Right.
Now, take another clock. So you have one clock here, you got one clock here, same thing. They're both photon clocks going up and down. If you take this clock and you slide it sideways, right? Now, in order for this photon in the clock that moved, in order for it to go down and come up and hit, because it's moving, it can't move
It had a longer
straight up and
path.
down.
It
It has to go at a diagonal,
Yeah.
right? And so because it has to go at a diagonal, it doesn't quite get to the bottom when the one that's not moving gets to the bottom, right? Because if it's got to go 6 inches to go down,
They're all limited by the speed of light. So no matter
Yeah.
what, the distance
the
traveled will be
speed of
same.
light is the
Yep.
limit. So
Yeah.
so
Right.
if this one has to go to, if this one goes exactly 6 inches straight up and down, it's not moving, then the one that had to go at a diagonal doesn't quite get to the bottom, right? Because it has to go a little bit longer because it moved and it has to stay with the clock. Does that make sense?
Right. The
100%.
path is longer for that one than the
The
other
path is a little bit longer because it's kind of a diagonal to stay with the clock.
one. Right.
So that means that this one ticks, the one that's staying still ticks before the one that moves. It has to.
I
Because
think another way
because
I
the
always like
photons
to
are
think-
moving at the
yeah.
same speed.
So I like,
this
to, think
and the
of it,
one
I
that
like to
moved,
think of it as, I don't think the way I like to think of it is that if my family's, says waves goodbye and I take off on a starship, I come back, well, their time has stayed the same for them. It's relative, right? Time slowed down for me. So when I come back, I'm going to think it's in the future, but it's not. It's there now, and that's mine now. Right?
Yep. Yeah, totally.
Right.
But the
so-
point is if something moves, so anything that moves through space, if it moves faster through space, it moves slower through time. And that's the illustration that
right.
because this clock didn't move, it's ticking faster than this one because this one ticks before this one just because it had to go at a diagonal. And
Now
they
do
have
that-
to go the same distance in the same time.
I want to say
'cause
now you
the
can do
speed of
that
light
same
never
thought
changes.
experiment, but within an accelerated reference frame. So now imagine you have two clocks, one that
Mhm.
actually has a gravity source on this side, and now the second example doesn't have a gravity source. So you're already existing within a flow going down. So what I'm saying is that the one that has the gravity source, time moves faster within.
Well, time moves slower in a increasing gravity. We have clocks. You're right. There is definitely a gravitational time dilation, but we know that the deeper you are in a gravity field, the slower your time moves. It's the
Because
same as accelerating.
wouldn't it cause the path to get longer, like in the example of moving? If you had a gravity source, wouldn't time bend around it or not?
Yeah, I think.
I mean, the photon, would it bend around the gravity source?
Well, yeah, like gravitational lensing. Gravitational lensing
Yeah.
happens. My impression of the reason that happens is because it's a little bit different. It's not because it's like freaking out from the gravity. It's because the photon is moving through space, and gravity and energy is causing gravity is deflecting space-time. And so the photon's moving through space, but the space is bending, and so you see the photon following space.
Right.
So the
Space-time
light
is the
bend-
path for the light. Yeah.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
space is kind of a thing, you know.
That's kind of
and
what I
so-
meant, was the path
Yeah.
for the light would be bent.
Sure.
So in
But
that sense, you could say the path is longer within the dimension of gravitational acceleration, right? Like
Sure,
if you're
I
saying
guess you
that
could
like
say that.
inwards is the tunnel, now you have a longer path because you're going through some curved space
Yeah.
versus
Yeah.
a straight line.
That's
That
the way
makes
I
sense to me.
visualize it. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
Makes
I think
sense.
that's a totally legit way. I mean, and if we all come out on the same, like, where, because the deeper you are in a gravity well, the slower time moves, and the faster you move, the slower your time moves, and your time is really sort of the tick, like, of your sort of the clock, right? And so, but in proper time, everybody's stuff gets played back sort of at the same time, and so that's why. So if you've ever seen that episode I did called "Consciousness Slows the Flow of Time" or something like that, using consciousness to slow the flow of time. So one of the predictions that the sonic gravity theory of everything makes is that because Stephen Hawking proved that anything that comes off the black hole has to come from the energy of the black hole, that he proved that Hawking radiation evaporates a black hole. And so I think that our consciousness is sitting on the surface of the black hole, and our consciousness is Hawking radiation, because Hawking radiation carries information and it's heat. And when we die, the information that we have in our memories and in our DNA leaves the surface of the black hole as Hawking radiation. And so I think when Stephen Hawking discovered Hawking radiation, I think he discovered the location of our consciousness in the universe. And so, but the reason, and so I was thinking, how can I fucking prove that, right? Well, and Stephen Hawking proved that the energy on the surface of the black hole is uniform and finite, right? I mean, there's a certain amount of it, and that's why the black hole evaporates as Hawking radiation leaves it, according to Stephen Hawking. I'm not making that up. That's him. So if you don't agree with that, you can disagree with him if you want. Take on the Hawk if you can. But here's the thing: is that because the energy on the surface of the black hole is finite, and because I'm suggesting that our consciousness is on the surface of the black hole, our consciousness uses the energy on the surface of the black hole to run our brain. And when we're unconscious, we release that energy. And now I think we've talked about before how time blows through the surface of a black hole. I think in our last one, we talked about that. And space-time, in the sonic gravity theory of everything, uses the energy on the surface of the black hole to change the hologram, which is what we notice around us as the passage of time. So space-time blowing through the black hole, and if we're on the surface of the black hole, we feel like we're moving through time, but it's not time, it's actually space-time. And so space-time is actually blowing through us, which is why I think all scientists agree neutrinos are blowing through us all the time. And I think neutrinos are sort of the grid paper of space-time. But that's not what we're going to talk about. So space-time's blowing through us, right, on the surface of this black hole. And so the thing that makes consciousness so interesting, and this is how I think we prove it, is our consciousness, according to Stephen Hawking wasn't talking about consciousness, but the energy is on the surface of the black hole. And if I'm right that our consciousness is on the surface of the black hole, then the energy that our consciousness uses to run our brain has to come from the surface of the black hole too. Now that means, because Stephen Hawking said that all the energy has to come from the black hole and it's finite and that's why it evaporates, that means that our consciousness competes with space-time for the energy in the surface of the black hole. Means we have to use the same energy. So space-time is blown through the black hole trying to change the hologram with that energy, and we're using it to run our brains. And so here's the thing. We're both competing for that same energy. So whatever I take to run my brain, time does not have to space-time blowing through the black hole doesn't have to change the hologram, right? That's not controversial. I mean, if Stephen Hawking said the energy is fixed and it all has to come from the black hole, and I'm saying, okay, let's take what he
But
said.
he's talking about black holes as when he's talking about black holes, he could be talking about any black hole.
Yeah, talking about every black hole. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, not the black hole.
Well, I mean, our black hole is just a black hole. I mean, now, so if you look at the cosmic microwave background, right?
What
The
I mean
cosmic microwave
is,
background,
yeah.
I think, is the black hole that is containing our universe, right? And the way we see the universe is just like on our TV screen. It's a hologram. We're seeing the universe play out like it's on TV, right? And so, but inside our universe, we see all kinds of black holes. And so that means there's universes inside our universe. That's the multiverse, right? And so if the black holes in our universe have black holes inside of them the same way we have them in our universe, that's the multiverse, right? It's our black hole, and then there's inside our universe there's other black holes. And so, but the thing you got to get your head around, I think, to get there is you got to think of the black hole of our universe is kind of like a fishbowl, right? And we're like the fish inside of it, but our consciousness is like if you took that fishbowl, right, and you like put your head to the fishbowl and close your eyes, like, right? And so your head is like touching the fishbowl, and then all of a sudden, boom, your brain is getting signals and you're experiencing what it's like to be a fish inside the bowl, right? And so you experience, and remember we talked about like your brain doesn't hear anything, your brain doesn't see anything, your brain doesn't smell anything. All your brain does is interpret electricity from your nerves, right?
Relative electricity.
Yeah, all your brain does is take signals from your nerves. Like your brain's sitting in like a sensory deprivation chamber. And so your brain only thinks it sees what the signals from your optic nerve tells it it's seeing. So the idea that
there is some chemistry going on there too, right? It's not not just
sure.
electrical currents. There's some chemistry going on too.
Yeah. No, you're totally right. You're totally right. But the whole idea is that really your entire reality is signals. It really is just information coming through your nerves into your brain. And yeah, chemicals affect the charge and all. I mean, the chemical environment, affects that information. But essentially,
it allows us to have pain and taste and right.
Sure, but pain and taste is just the way your brain interprets those signals from your nerves.
And the chemistry is
there's no pain that shoots to you. You just interpret those signals as pain, right?
Chemistry is also a relative play or relative motion within like a greater fluid. And so you have different layers. That's what you're talking about. You're talking about like the outer realm could be the fishbowl we put our heads on. When you're talking about the smooth cosmic microwave background, but then you have black holes at every galactic center. And so the human body itself is limited by a factor of the speed of light outward, 1 time the speed of light inward. And so we live in a relative layer, potentially, of a greater system, right? And you're saying when we perceive something that a primal flow is blowing through a certain layer.
Dude, I'm trying so hard to stay with you.
Well, you're talking about space-time blows through our consciousness. And so our consciousness is a layer of a black hole. A layer is a black hole, is the surface of a black hole, and could potentially
is on the surface,
Right. And so when space-time blows through that, you could call space-time the raw fluid of creation, just like the rawest fluid, the Higgs stream, the fluid of our creation is blowing through a specific layer. And at that point, it's being perceived, right? And so now when you talk about our universe, materially,
it's only if it's only in touch with the hologram. That's what we can perceive.
And we perceive the waking universe when we're in an alpha and beta state of brain harmony.
Okay.
Right. And so then you also have delta and theta states of brain harmony and slow and fast gamma states of brain harmony. And so when you're talking about how consciousness somewhat creates distortions within the layers, right? That a hummingbird might have a slower time because its conscious snapshot is so much faster.
Well, I think that's a way that's definitely, I think, a legit interpretation of it. The reason I think the hummingbird is so much faster than we are is because, you know, the hummingbird has 650 million neurons per gram of its brain. 650. We have 53 million neurons. We have a bigger brain and more neurons. But when you think of the density of the neurons in the hummingbird's brain, hummingbird has like 650 million. We have 53. And so what that means is if the sonic gravity theory of everything, if we're just contemplating the sonic gravity theory of everything, that our consciousness is sitting on the surface of the black hole, taking energy off the surface of the black hole that space-time uses as it blows through the black hole to change the hologram and move time. The more we take away, the less space-time has to change the hologram, which means our consciousness, our active consciousness, slows the flow of time. Because time wants the same. Oh no, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I think you might have mentioned this the last time we spoke, was that the hummingbird, when it sleeps, the REM or the delta
heartbeat
state is still the same delta state as the human, or the heartbeat drops.
The heartbeat's one beat per second.
So that's like standing heartbeat of a sleeping hummingbird.
Yeah, one per second. But the minute it's awake, it's 20 beats a second.
So 20 times faster than your average human beat.
Yeah,
I mean, if your average human beats 1 beat per second, right? So the hummingbird awake beats 20 times faster than the human awake. Yeah. And so I could go on. Thank you. No, I mean, I could go. That's cool.
I'm listening.
One thing that I still want to resist is this idea that the hologram is only 2-dimensional. Why can't it be 3-dimensional? Why can't it have a thickness?
Well,
because that would make it easier for me, since I observe a 3-dimensional world. It would make it easier for me to accept.
Okay. Well, but you don't seem to have a problem accepting the illusion of dimension on your TV, right?
But I know it's 2-dimensional though.
Yeah, but it looks 3D though, right?
Well,
so when you're watching a movie, Artisan, that's where I use the conscious snapshot, the frame rate of the observer, as the dimension of the thickness.
But that's the TV. That's something we created. I'm looking at the world, and I've got 3 dimensions. I mean,
but remember, you're interpreting energy. You're interpreting energy from.
I mean, quantum entanglement is the concept of particles being separated 3-dimensionally, but still being connected.
Yeah. No. Well, okay.
That's 3-dimensional.
So we can talk about that. That's like another thing. So we were talking about time dilation, and then we got into the hologram again. And we can, however you want to do it, it's cool. I'm down.
No.
The resolution 3D on the hologram, the resolution, the small, like if you're looking at your, the holographic surface, like you're looking right on it, the depth is just resolution, right? So you can achieve this illusion of depth with making things smaller as the math tells you they would be further away. And so, and it's sort of the illusion of the way things move at that resolution that gives you this illusion of depth. Now, the reason you feel like you're reaching out and grabbing things and picking them up is because your different senses are sending information to your consciousness that you're interpreting as, I'm reaching out, and my hand looks like here, my hand looks really big, and now it looks really small, or now it looks not really small. I don't have small hands. No, but now it looks smaller because it's further away from my face, right? And so in a lot of ways, like if you just like try to remember that your brain is really only interpreting information. It's not really, or signals, bioelectricity or whatever you want to call it. It's not actually, your brain doesn't see anything.
What about math? I mean, we have 3-dimensional coordinates, and right, math says we have three dimensions at least, right?
Yeah. Well, Yeah, no, that's definitely true. And, we do the reverse sort of conjugation of that all the time to program, modern warfare and, and video games that use 3 dimensions, that we use the same, just the reverse math to show a 3-dimensional space on a 2-dimensional surface. So we make that transition all the time. And so because when you play virtual reality computer games and they feel like, real, they just, the imagery looks believable that it's 3-dimensional. You don't think twice to question it. There's really, if you just did that in reverse, you're kind of at the same place where you could actually be in a 2-dimensional universe, but you're just experiencing it in 3D, right?
I don't know. I feel like I can tell the difference when I'm doing my CAD work. I work in SketchUp and I can tell very easily when I'm in 3 dimensions and when I'm in 2 dimensions. If I'm in like an a parallel projected view or perspective view or 3-dimensional view, I can see all of those. Those have depth, right? It's not just an illusion. Well, I guess you're saying it is, but
do you dream in 3D?
I mean, I don't know.
I think people
like
do.
I feel like I do.
Yeah. Are you really there? When you're running in your dream, are you really running?
Don't be trying to catch me now.
I'm just asking.
Gotcha.
I'm just asking. It's just I'm just merely trying to. I'm just merely sort of doing my best to illustrate that your brain, when it receives stuff, it might not be like what you think you're experiencing. Like if you think you're running in a dream, you're not running. I think you still experience running. You still experience running, maybe, but you see what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, if your dreams seem real, then go ahead.
Oh no, sorry. You can go ahead and finish what you guys were saying. Sorry, I'll be quiet.
No, that was it. I was just
I was just trying to imagine. I never really paid that much attention. Sometimes, back when I was meditating heavily, and I was talking to, I've got some old interviews with Alexei where we're talking about this. I couldn't tell if I was dreaming or hallucinating. So if the hallucination part was in 3 dimensions for sure, I know that for a fact. But the dreaming, I can't place that whether it's 2-dimensional or 3-dimensional. To be honest with you, and so to me, there's kind of a difference.
But did it seem real when you dream, though? Right? Like unless you're dreaming,
the hallucination part was really real. Yeah, those are the times when, it's a long story, but jumping out of bed and all that, it was
right.
Real.
Well, I mean, so if dreaming is just a completely, that's just another state of consciousness, right? Alexei's that's Alexei's department.
Well,
right?
I guess what I'm saying
within the black hole, we're in a less dense realm because our brain is taking slower frame shots. We're in a 1 hertz delta state or a 4 hertz theta state. And so that if we're in a black hole, it all depends on rotation rate of a fluid. And so your delta orbits slower than your fast gamma, which is orbiting quicker. And so every point in space-time is essentially made of orbiting flows of space-time. But what I wanted to get at real quick was that perception of the universe is a secondary aspect of the primal flows of space-time to begin with, which means, in other words, that all experiences are relative to the inertial frame of motion. And so the universe expanding and black holes becoming denser is more of a relative thing based off of our flow of of the gravitational acceleration of infinity. And what we really have when it comes to creating a perception is 1/2 past and 1/2 future. And so the 1/2 past and 1/2 future are what create a 3-dimensional reality, but all relative to the inertial frame. That's how I like to think about it. And so the 3 dimensions that we experience is a creation of layered black holes.
I was trying to think of an analogy for these hallucinations I was having whenever I was doing the meditation thing.
Wow, you just said something really
like schizophrenic people can have awake, hallucinations awake, right? So those hallucinations are at a distance. They're not seeing them at their eyes like in a dream. And see what I was trying to do. You brought up an interesting question. I was trying to figure out my dreams if they're 2-dimensional or not. And so I know that the hallucinations weren't 2-dimensional. You know, I could tell there was a distance, and I think maybe what was happening to me there was I would do that thing where you were like half awake, maybe like a lucid dream, where you're like I was actually awake but part of my body was asleep, but my consciousness was awake. I would see these things, and it was just for an instant, and then then I would come fully awake. But it's interesting you brought that up because it made me think of like schizophrenics and those types of people who see actual, right, who actually see people and
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess the only thing I was just trying to say was that, well, when you dream, unless you go, okay, I know I'm dreaming the whole time, right? Then if your mind can't always tell the difference between a dream and when you're awake until you wake up, then that might suggest that you dream in 3D too, because you can't tell the difference.
And the depth is more of a creation of your mind.
Yeah. And but that was my point, was that if your mind creates the depth in a dream,
I just don't
then
like
there's
it.
no reason to think that your mind isn't creating the depth in reality too. I mean, I don't think there's a reason to think that it couldn't. Like, you can say you don't think it does, like it's just not that's not your intuition, that's not your feeling. You can say that.
Yeah.
But if you admit that when you dream it feels pretty fucking 3D, I mean, then you can't
no, but
say
that's
that
why I brought
sure
up the
it's
example
not.
of schizophrenics, because they're obviously awake when they have their hallucinations. So, and that feels very 3-dimensional to them.
Oh yeah, man.
Right. And they're hallucinations created by the mind. And that's where Brad, circles it back to our brains literally aren't touching anything. And if you want to just think physics and science and materialism, then the brain is just sending off frequencies and we're creating a 3-dimensional reality out of signals.
Yeah, we're just interpreting information.
But that doesn't mean we can't live in a 3-dimensional reality, though. Just because our brains do that work for us, our brains interpret reality to a certain degree. That's my take. Right. My brain, yes, my brain's creating an image, but when I reach out and pick up my mic or my phone, I know how to get to it because it's over there. So I can go get it because my brain is creating the image. I can go get the phone because I know where it is in 3-dimensional space. So I don't know. It's one of those things where I'm certainly not trying to be argumentative.
No, it's fine.
I love you guys.
What you're saying is what some of your listeners are saying the same thing.
Yeah.
Like you're
we're not saying anything.
Why
right
people
now.
like your shows, because they're in touch,
You guys need to talk more. The Tic Tac guy is the tech. I need to introduce you two guys too. He did like maintenance tech work for SpaceX and what was the other military base? Tic Tac guy.
I forget. Yeah.
And down in Jamaica, it was in not Jamaica, but anyway, down there in the islands, and saw a Tic Tac with he said human pilot. I have a video on it, and I actually drew a model of it.
Cool.
And animated it.
It's on the show. I forget what Pi-Fi number it was, but it's one of them. Yeah.
Cool, man.
So anyway,
what we were saying, just to take it back to time dilation. So if our consciousness is on the surface of this black hole, our consciousness is on the surface of the hologram, and like Stephen Hawking said, our consciousness has to draw the energy from the surface of the black hole, then that leaves less energy, space-time blowing through the surface to change the hologram. So that means that the reason that the hummingbird is so much faster than we are is because when its brain is conscious, it's sucking so much more energy off the hologram because its neuron density is 650 million neurons per gram. Ours is 53 million neurons per gram. So its time ticks slower because space-time doesn't have the same amount of energy to change the hologram. And so the way that we could prove that, to scientifically like prove it, is if we got a little analog clock. And the reason I think this will work is because like we talked about earlier, is that when the hummingbird is asleep, its heart beats 1 time a second. When it's awake, not when it's flying, but when it's awake, it beats 20 times a second. And so I think that means when its consciousness is active, it sucks more energy off of the surface of the hologram and it slows time down. And because it slows time down, it slows its time down, its relative time, because there's space-time blowing through it, and it can't blow through it as fast because its consciousness is running. And so that's why when you can think of like its clock going, its clock is going click, click, click. Now ours is going click, 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 click. And so, but then when they're all played back at the same speed, right? When the flow of time, you step back and you're a third party observer, you see, Brad moving normally, but then the hummingbird, because to itself, it's moving the same as we are, but its time is ticking slower. So as it moves, it's like, it's like doing stuff and click, click.
But the hummingbird would have to be in. The hummingbird itself would have to be in motion. It
is in motion, but its clock is ticking slower. But then when you play everybody's clock back at the same time in proper time, it's moving really fast between these ticks because it was ticking slower while, relatively to itself. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So that's where
you
mentioned when the hummingbird's awake, it has the 20 times the heartbeat of a human. The question I have is, have you looked at the conscious snapshot of the hummingbird yet? So like humans go from
I don't have like hummingbird lab or anything like that.
You know what I'm saying though? Like I feel like that's the next. In order to prove that, let's like measure the brain waves that exist within the hummingbird. Does it go to like super fast gamma?
Well, okay. So the way that I would do it by experimenting on a hummingbird, and this is a prediction that if it turns out to be wrong, then my shit isn't right. Right. So this is a falsifiable prediction. If you take an analog clock, because its heart, right? Its heart is not a consciously controlled organ like ours. Ours hearts are not consciously controlled. So the consciousness doesn't interfere with that. So that's why I think that the time is what moves, because the conscious hummingbird, just like we do, takes energy away from the surface of the black hole. So if you put a clock, like it's just a little analog clock, if you surgically inserted it into that hummingbird and kept a control outside, like, on the desk or something, and the hummingbird was awake or whatever, and then you opened it up, took the clock out and compared it to the one on the desk, the one inside the hummingbird would have to probably run 20 times faster. That would be my prediction. It runs 20 times faster.
I think the whole bird would have to be in motion near the speed of light.
No, because we're talking about at the, in quotes, the quantum state at the Planck scale of every single vortice ultimately. And the vortices that exist within the bird's brain are moving faster. And so in a sense, you could say they're closer to the center of time, having a faster conscious snapshot, faster frame rate. Meanwhile, the human is further out here. But then you look at the crystal, the entire structure, what you were calling the overall time, right? Because we all have our perceptions of
proper time. Yep.
What were you calling that?
It's proper time.
Proper time. So then when you look at
I don't make that up. That's like real physics.
I mean, I call it the crystal of time because there's the crystal state, but then there's different layers within it that are based off conscious rate or frame rate. And so at the end of the day, it's all a solid structure though that flows as one. And so there's different perceptions of this time within it. I totally get what you're saying.
Yeah, I totally get what you just said there. I just totally understood that.
I'm glad you two are together on this.
Yeah, but then get this.
It's all.
Then I was like, you know what? I was like, dude, Yeah, I can't like I probably can't cut open a hummingbird and shit. Like Ashley'd flip out. And so I was like, you know what? Here, I'll tell you what. Here's the way we know it's true already. We don't even have to. I was like, oh man, I can't fucking believe I didn't think of this. If that's true, then when you put any kind of medical timing device inside a human being, right, it has to slow down. It can't be the same as a clock that was put on, like like, the table. Like if you did the same thing to a human, it should work. Like I should be able to do it. I'm not gonna.
How do pacemakers work then?
That's what I was about to ask.
And I'll tell you what, I was like, you know what? If this is right, if I'm right, then this would have to be a huge fucking problem in the medical device industry. And guess what? It is. It's called calibration. And they have all kinds of problems keeping things calibrated that are put inside people. And that is a fact.
Isn't that sometimes from environmental?
No. Well, I mean, they'll say, oh, it's got something to do with heat, but that's bullshit because clocks don't run slower in the fucking Bahamas compared to Alaska. It ain't heat that does it. It's inside your body. It's consciousness. Or maybe there's a different kind of heat inside your body that is driven by consciousness. I think that's possible because I thought about that. I read where it said one time that, they ascribe, the loss of calibration and all that to the heat of the human body and whatever. I think that's true, but it's not just any kind of heat. Otherwise, when it was 120 in fucking Kuwait, our shit would have been like, and it wasn't.
Well, I mean, I was talking about the environmental as in like, if you put your phone next to your pacemaker, it's probably gonna interfere with it a little bit or something like that. Magnetic,
yeah, maybe, maybe
electromagnetic fields, whatever. Because I know you can't go through certain, like you can't have an MRI with a pacemaker, right?
Yeah, I definitely think the magnetism or whatever would mess up your, shut that valve off in your heart or something. Probably, I don't know. And some of it's like insurance, right? Maybe they're just like, oh no, you can't do it, because they don't want to get sued. So they got to, put all these disclaimers on stuff so you don't, if it, they can't get sued over it. But yeah, so anyway, that's the whole idea that, it's possible that if our consciousness and these are things that are totally corroborated by all the things we see around us. So the sonic gravity theory of everything is that our consciousness sits on the 2D holographic surface of a black hole. And yes, that answer to that is yes, definitely. Like time, space, gravity, it's all connected. Right. And so, but the conscious hummingbird, right? Because if you look at like the hummingbird, just look at a picture of a hummingbird, man. I'm telling you, it's not fast because it has fast muscles. It's not like they have like, special muscles that nobody else has. It's because they have slow time. And that experiment that I talked about, inserting a clock into an analog sort of clock into a hummingbird just surgically to see if when you remove it, it's faster than a control clock. But then I found I was like, man, I got to see, there's got to be research about medical devices in people. And it turns out there's a huge problem with calibration, and it's this. And they ascribe it to heat or something, like messing things up, but things don't get messed up like, between Alaska and, and
I would say
the Sahara.
Heat's a bad example because it seems like your body temperature would keep the heat of your pacemaker pretty constant, right? It would take a lot of heat.
Degrees.
It would take a lot of
98
heat
degrees.
I mean, I can imagine if it could get zapped by microwaves or something like that, it would affect it,
Yeah, but I mean, keep the analog clock in an oven at 98.6 degrees, so it's the same temperature. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and it will still run faster. It has to run faster. And so
let's talk about your device.
Yeah, sure, man.
Because I'm interested.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. Okay, so that's the framework. That's the foundation.
Yeah.
Based
so
off that, how do you think you can manipulate gravity? Right.
So here's the whole evolution for how.
Here's a yes question too. Yes.
Yeah. Well.
Even time is different for on the space station.
Yep.
So
because satellites need to work.
You don't have to be that far away.
Yeah, for two reasons, right? Because they're further out of the gravity of
and
the
they're moving
Earth.
faster.
and they're
Right.
moving faster.
So both
Yeah.
of them combined make the
So there's
frame.
two factors that so that messes up their time. That changes
That
their time. Makes a difference
orbital
for us.
speed's like what, 17,000 miles an hour or something.
It really depends on the distance from
just
center.
to stay in orbit.
Yep. Yeah. Yep. I mean, you're both right. So I mean,
A equals v squared over r, and A is defined by gmm over r squared. So, as you get further out, the force of gravity gets less.
Right.
You just need to make sure that you're going that escape velocity. You get what I'm saying, like the orbital velocity, and it gets faster the further away from the center you get. But the frequency actually goes less. So things orbiting closer will have a faster radial change, but things that are further will have a faster velocity.
Yep. I agree. That makes sense.
That's how we slingshot spacecraft out to the edge of the galaxy, right?
Yeah.
Gravitational slingshot.
Yeah.
so here's anti-gravity. So I was looking at those UFOs, right? And I saw them just instantaneously accelerate, right? I mean, they're just sitting there and then they're just gone. Now, force equals mass times acceleration, right? And so in order to go like 10 miles instantly, the acceleration to do that is ridiculous. I mean, it's insane because you're talking about in no time going so far. It's just the numbers are mind-boggling. But here's the thing. An acceleration like that, take like a craft, right? Take your body, right? 200 pounds, right? Now multiply it by that acceleration. That's the force that you would feel from that acceleration. That's the force. Your mass times that just insanely large acceleration. That's the force on your body when you take off at that speed.
That's why some people speculate that UAPs are just drones and there's no biological life inside them. Right?
Yeah, but see, here's the thing though, is that even if it was just a drone, the pressure on that thing would crumple it like a pop can. The force is so great that even if it was just a drone, it would crush everything inside of it. It would blow out any kind of electronics. It would rupture everything. I mean, you're talking about the acceleration that those craft would develop. Not even if it was unmanned, the structure of the craft itself. I mean, you think of like when cars like crash into each other, head-on collision at 60 miles an hour on the highway. That is fucking nothing compared to the force that would just completely pancake anything that accelerated that fast. So they're unmanned doesn't have anything to do with the viability of like manned, unmanned. None of that matters. What matters, the only thing that saves those craft from just absolute destruction is that they're massless. They have to have no mass, because if they have no mass, then you can multiply infinite acceleration by it and it's still zero force on you, still zero force on the craft. And so that's why the craft have to be massless. And so can you hear those kids screaming?
It's okay. It's just a faint.
Okay.
Like fairies.
I don't hear anything. You're good.
Like fairies
all right,
in the
all
background. It's a.
Okay.
While you cuss at your kids.
Yeah. No, I didn't cuss them.
I'm just kidding.
But yeah, so they have to be massless. So that's like step one.
And you wonder massless is a new type of matter. Because if we're observing these objects, what can we observe that's massless?
Focused light from lenses is massless.
That's true.
What I wanted to say,
Because even plasma though has mass, right? A certain amount of mass.
yes, right. It's made of electrons. Yes. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Whereas when they say light, it's more just I guess it's photons. But I don't know. Are photons considered massless?
Yeah, right.
They have energy, right? Yeah, I mean they're definitely
equals,
considered massless, but they have energy,
right?
and
But
so I
considered
think
massless,
a consensus physicist would tell you that they still have momentum
right,
because
because it equals hv.
Isn't it that the energy propagates when it interacts with
H
matter?
being Planck's what is it called? H, H with the little hashtag, and then V.
Planck's constant.
Yeah, and then mu though, the frequency is the momentum in a particle or a momentum in a wave. I'm pretty sure it's one of those two.
So when a photon strikes matter, it gives off energy, right?
It gives off momentum.
in the
interacts, right?
It exchanges electrons or whatever, right?
Yeah, there's like a fine
the
structure constant. There's like a fine structure constant that's like 1/137. There's a certain chance, right? And that's sort of the superposition of outcomes or whatever. Like there's a chance that things will interact. There's a
Right here.
and so
E equals HV, the blue square.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. That's
yeah. So,
but what does all that mean though, as far as building?
Yeah. So, well, right. So this is my engineering approach, right? So they have to be massless. So that's like the first step. And so then my next step was, okay, well, what causes mass? And so this is when I started sort of teaching myself quantum physics, and I started looking up stuff on YouTube, and I found this great channel called Space Time by PBS. Dr. Matt O'Dowd teaches it.
I subscribe to him. Yeah.
Yeah. And I saw an episode where he said that mass is a function of the Higgs field. The Higgs field gives matter mass. Now the Higgs boson is what they idealize as the particle of the field. They model it like that, but it's not the weight. It's not the mass of the Higgs boson that is the mass of matter. It's a function of the Higgs field, and so it's not the same as the mass of the boson. And it's kind of like you kind of think of it like honey, right? Or think of it like the water in the pool, right? So like mass and force arises from like moving through the fluid, like Alexei says, right?
The fluid of creation. I mean, I don't know what other word to use.
Yeah. So I mean, so in a lot of ways, that's like it's the fluid of creation. I know it sounds kind of like
very woo,
really like 60s and shit, but it's like for real. Like it's like, I mean, it's like that's like gravity, right? And so so it's this Higgs field is what gives matter its mass. And don't argue. I mean, like I didn't say that. It's Dr. O'Dowd. He's the one who came up with it, right? Or he's the one who told me, and I'm just don't shoot the messenger. So the Higgs field gives matter mass, and that's a fact. So then I was like, well, okay. So if I want to get rid of mass because I want to fly my Tic Tac, right? The Higgs field I know is what gives it its mass. So how do I get rid of that? How do I get a hold of the Higgs field? And in his episode, Dr. O'Dowd said that the reason that like right-handed, electrons like photons and sort of left-handed chiral electrons are so different in terms of speed. Like I guess the left-handed electron moves through space like super slow compared to the like right-handed electron. And it's because the Higgs field is hanging up and hanging on to these left-handed electrons. The left-handed electron is grabbed and gets grabbed by the Higgs field, and that's a fact. Like I didn't say that, Dr. Matt O'Dowd did. And so then I was like, well, okay, so I got left-handed electrons that are hung up by the Higgs field. Now, Newton's third law, right, says that every force creates an equal and opposite, every action creates an equal and opposite reaction, right? And so that means that if the Higgs field is pulling on the left-handed electron, then that means that the left-handed electron's pushing on the Higgs field, right? Now, that's combining classical and quantum mechanics. right? So that's pretty fucking interesting, I think. So if that's true, then if I want to break the symmetry of the Higgs field, the key is through the left-handed electron. That's how you do it. The left-handed electron is hanging onto the Higgs field. The Higgs field is what's given matter mass. And so how do I bust the fucking Higgs field? How do I use the left-handed electron to break the symmetry of the Higgs field? And so I was thinking about it and thinking about it. I said, well, okay, here's the thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to figure out how to get left-handed electrons. That's the next thing I have to do. Like, that's the next step, right? I'm just going step by step by step by step like an engineer, because I'm an engineer. And so I'm like, okay, well, I got to find out how to get left-handed electrons so I can figure out how to hold on the Higgs field, and I figure out how to break it. And so I found some research from Dr. Lawrence Eves from the University of Nottingham, like 9 years ago or something. He came up with this. He was fucking huge fan of what they call graphene. And graphene is like a 1 atom thick. Thanks, Tic Tac guy. I think it's interesting too. Like a 1 atom thick sheet of carbon. And what he said is, you pass a magnetic field through graphene and it teases apart left and right-handed electrons. And those left-handed electrons just fucking sit in what they call cyclotronic orbits, just sitting in a magnetic field. They just fucking sit there. You pass a magnetic field through graphene, and it's because he said it's because it has the hexagonal molecular structure. You pass a magnetic field through a hexagonal molecular structure, you separate out the left and right-handed electrons, and those left-handed electrons just fucking sit there and circle. They sit there in the middle of that field, and all they do is orbit around, just going like that. It's called a cyclotronic orbit. That's what he said. That's not my research.
Above each, so let's say you had a graphene sheet, and it's made of a whole bunch of hexagons, and there's nodal points at the corners of each hexagon that connects to each other.
Yeah.
Where would that electron be rotating at relative to that structure?
Relative to the geometry of the hexagonal molecular structure, I don't know. What I do know is that they separate themselves out because they're leptons, right? Or no, fermions, right? Yeah, they occupy energy and energy levels called Landau levels, and so you can't have like two electrons like in the same state, right? And so they stack up.
Valence shells?
No, they're called Landau level, the energy levels. I mean, valence shells is kind of
like the Balmer.
Yeah, it's kind of similar.
They jump to higher energy states, right?
Right.
Like
yeah.
Electrons do.
I mean, so you're talking about like valence electrons. Maybe that's the same mechanic. It could be this very same mechanic. The reason that
similar potentially. I don't know. I don't want to cut you off anymore.
No. Well, I mean, like when I think of valence shells, like, right, I'm thinking of, how do the electrons that go around hydrogen and then helium and then like carbon, and where do all those electrons stack up? And it makes, now as I think about it, well, it makes perfect sense that, those valence shells, but the valence shells are specific to atoms, right? I don't know if it's specific to atoms in the carbon atoms. Maybe it is, but I don't think so. I don't think it is, because not exactly. The principle might be the same driver, and maybe it's driving.
It's the same shell. So you'd have one electron existing within different ones of them based off of the energy that's been pumped into it, right?
Well, the only reason that I say that I'm not sure if that's exactly what's going on is because the left-hand electrons are sitting in cyclotronic orbits, which means they're not orbiting your atom.
That's why I was wondering where they actually orbited. So they're probably orbiting in that free hexagonal space.
Perhaps. Well, they're in the magnetic field, which is perpendicular to the hexagonal space.
So potentially doing one of those numbers. So if this is your sheet orbiting in this direction,
well, the field direction's this way. So I think they're going like this, around the field. But I do know that since they stack in these Landau levels, they're not surrounding the atom.
Okay.
You see what I mean? And I
Yep.
think of valence as like surrounding the atom. So
Definitely.
I think what you're talking about in terms of the valence shells in an atom talk about how when you add more electrons, how they stack up differently. And so I think the principle is the same, that they stack up differently, but they're
not
not
around
stacking
protons
around
and
the same
neutrons.
atom.
They're
Though,
stacking up around the magnetic field.
the orbit
Yep.
from the
The little vortice that the micro vortice created from the magnetic field flowing through the hexagonal
Yep.
structure.
Yeah.
the higher the energy state, the larger the orbit, right, around the center.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, that's yeah. And so so anyway, so when you
Because when you exchange or lose an electron, they're jumping states to the higher, right? And
that'd be losing the photon. Yeah, that's when the photon's emitted, and that photon light, the color, the frequency is related to the energy of the difference between the shells.
Yeah, and that's definitely how they measure stuff like that, especially how like quantum entanglement, things like that. That's absolutely right. But getting back to, we needed to grab the left-handed electron, so I need to figure out how to make left-handed electrons and catch them and hang on to them. So I found Dr. Lawrence Eves' research that says you pass a magnetic field through a hexagonal molecular structure, you tease out those left and right-handed electrons, and those left-handed electrons just sit in cyclotronic orbits right in your field. That's all they do. They just sit there and just fucking spin, right? And so I'm like, okay, I need to create a magnetic field. I need to pass it through to a hexagonal molecular structure. And interestingly, if you go look at like, Kurt J. Mongal's theory of everything, when he had Linda Moulton Howe on, which everybody said she was like a crackpot and blah, blah, blah. I was kind of a fan because she said that the metamaterial, or sort of the whole structure that they were working with, was a bismuth, magnesium, zinc layered alloy.
Yeah.
Guess what the molecular structure of bismuth, magnesium, and zinc is?
Each one independently? I'm going to say
they're all perfect hexagonal.
Yeah.
They're all perfectly hexagonal. Right. And so that's why I'm going, okay, I fucking got it. Like, and that's when I hear things in the UFO and I hear people talking and stuff like that. And I'm like, oh, they're hexagonal molecular structure, or I'll hear magnesium, bismuth, magnesium, zinc, and I'll go look it up and I'll be like, oh, I'm going to see what that molecular structure is. It's a fucking hexagon. I'm like, okay, I believe it. That makes sense. So that's how the theory of everything and the quantum echo theory and my anti-gravity, my theory of anti-gravity and everything, that's why I just think it's right. I mean, it's just because everything is always just matching perfectly. Anyway, so thanks, Dr. Lawrence Eves, for that. He's the one who told me I need to pass my magnetic field through a hexagonal molecular structure in order to tease out them left-handed electrons. And Dr. Matt O'Dowd said left-handed electrons are hung up by the Higgs field, and Sir Isaac Newton said that anything that's hanging something up is getting pushed on. And
but I want to stay. I'm trying to stay focused on your experiment, right?
Yeah. Okay, so I'm about ready to tell you. I'll tell you. So now
I just know the audience is going to be more interested in the actual mechanics of.
Yeah. So there it is.
Yeah.
But see, I had to tell you that you got to pass that magnetic field through that molecular structure, right? So up here, what you have sitting on that shelf there, don't pay attention on oscilloscope. We'll talk about that in a second. But you see that plate of zinc plates, zinc and it's zinc and graphene.
Can you just, grab it real quick? I can't really. I'm not sure what.
So heavy, dude. It's super
or
heavy.
touch it with your hands so we can see it, so we know what you're talking about.
This right here. This is magnesium. These plates are all.
So if you guys are watching, it's on the top right.
Okay.
There's a rectangular plate up there.
I don't know what to do. Right I'm going to put.
This is zinc right up here.
Let's see. I'm going to put.
There we go.
This is zinc right here. This plate is zinc. Now underneath of that is a Faraday disc, and a Faraday disc is. You got that, Tony? Can you cue it up? Do you have one? A Faraday disc is like, it's just a disc, and you spin it. It's like a copper disc. Michael Faraday came up with it a couple hundred years ago.
We'll get one
Oh,
queued up real quick.
Oh, you want me to do
Can
one?
you help me with that, or you
Oh
got it?
no, yeah. So came up with a couple hundred years ago. So you take a disc and you spin it, and then you stick a magnet, kind of like you run the disc through this magnet. Now this magnet shoves the electrons to the middle. That makes the middle more negative and the edge more positive. There you go. That's a Faraday disc. Now, so you see the magnet on the rim of the disc. Now the disc is spinning.
So I
Now-
need this picture to come up bigger. There we go.
Yeah. Now the disc is negative in the middle and positive, more positive on the side, because that magnet is shoving them electrons to the middle. Then you take a wire. You see that M, that contact there?
Mm-hmm.
That's a contact that connects the edge of the disc and then to the middle of the disc. If you take a wire, you run it from the edge to the middle, you create a circuit. Okay.
So does that relate
And
to
if
a
since it's
Van der
plus and
Graaf generator?
minus, say again.
The Van der Graaf generator. This is very similar.
I don't
Or
know what
no?
that is.
Okay, we'll talk about that later. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Looks like he's got B and is this a loop somehow from B to B?
Well, so if you take the M is the contact
Mhm.
for the rim, and then the middle is the middle is where you need to connect the
Because he has a magnet here that's inducing the
Yep.
current, right?
Yep, it's shoving the electrons to the middle. And essentially what it does is it turns that disc into a battery. It's got plus on one side, it's got minus in the middle.
Or kind of
If
like
you
an
connect
electric motor too, right?
Yeah. If you connect a wire from the middle to the outer edge, now you have a circuit. And so since it's a battery in a circuit, you're going to have a flow of electricity from the edge of the disc through the wire to the middle of the disc. And
You have
so
an electrical gradient across the disc from
yep.
outer to
And so
inner.
anytime you have any electric potential like that, it's called voltage.
Exactly.
and-
Yeah.
And here's the thing: anytime you have a current in nature, you have electrical current, then you have a magnetic field. An electromagnetic field arises when the current starts flowing. But the beautiful thing about this Faraday disc, the beautiful thing about it, is that the magnetic field blows through the surface of the disc. The disc shapes the magnetic field, and it blows perpendicular to that disc, and it blows through it. So if you go back to one of the other images, you can see that it will show you that. See that? There you go, right there. See that B? B is the field. That's the field flow, the field direction. So it blows through the surface of that disc, and you can see there. See the red? That's the connection of the outer of the disc to the middle of the disc.
And that's all right hand rule, right?
Yep. Yeah. Yep.
As far as direction of force, like yeah.
For the electromagnetic field. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I talk about the right-hand rule in the sonogravity theory of everything when I derive the Dirac matrices, the charge matrix. So now I have that thing right there. You can't. There's a motor in the middle, and then there's a disc spinning, and then there's connectors, and then you see that plate on top that I'm passing the magnetic field through. Because when I spin my magnetic field, and I got magnets now. The geometry of the field, that the magnetic field, if you just have like one big bulldog magnet, is all like, you know what I mean? Like the magnetic field, it's not nice and uniform. And so I have like uniform magnets all around mine. So it's kind of nice and straight. So
As in the outer rim always has a nice field. The same, like the left side rim has the same as the right side rim, instead of just having the left polarized fully.
Yeah. I have several around the outside, and they're all like, just so it's nice. I want it level. I mean, if you have just one, the field looks like, I mean, it's like it's blowing through, but it's weird. So I want mine nice and straight.
You want a nice
so
bell
I have
curve going over it.
What's that?
Right. This is like your disc laying sideways. You want a nice bell curve, right?
Yeah.
Versus like one that's been like warped to the side.
Yeah. I mean, because it's a mess. It's a mess if you.
I got you.
Now, yeah. So, okay. So I'm going to get to that in just a second.
Okay.
So if you go, so now we're spinning our disc, it's creating a voltage. That means it has a magnetic field blowing through it, right? I call it the amp, right? The anti-gravity amp is the plates that the magnetic field's passing through the hexagonal molecular structure, which is teasing out those left and right-handed electrons. And now I got my left-handed electrons sitting in cyclotronic orbits inside that magnetic field. So I know those left-handed electrons in that field are hanging on to the Higgs field. The Higgs field's hanging on to them, and they're hanging on to the Higgs field. So here's where my theory of everything and my theory of quantum gravity and anti-gravity depart from consensus physics, to scientific consensus. Everybody in scientific consensus physicists, they all know that in the vacuum, the Higgs field is non-zero. 240 gigaelectron volts is the field energy of the Higgs field in a vacuum. That's a fact. Everybody agrees with that. That's not controversial. Where I depart from the scientific consensus is that I think it's negative 246 gigaelectron volts. And the reason I think it's negative is because gravity is negative energy density. I think the Higgs field is the gravity field. And that means, and I think because the Higgs field is leashing the energy to space-time, like we talked about. And if the leash of the energy to space-time, like imagine okay, here's the surface of the black hole of space-time. If the leash is anchored in the middle here and it's leashing this matter and energy to the surface of space-time, as that matter and energy swings out, what's it do? It deflects like gravity does in general relativity. It deflects the surface of the black hole. So if the Higgs field is negative energy density, which would be tension, because tension is negative, tension in the Higgs field is what is deflecting space-time, which agrees with general relativity, and it agrees with my theory of everything. And it's because it's negative, because it's pulling, is the reason that matter stays leashed to the surface of the black hole, to the surface of space-time. And so now, if matter and energy is leashed to the surface of this black hole, and the leash is the Higgs field that's holding it there, right? The left-handed electron is what is getting grabbed by the Higgs field. If it's negative energy density, right? If that's the Higgs field is negative energy density, then putting positive energy into the Higgs field will bring it to the ground state, right? Because if it's not 246, if it's negative 246 gigaelectron volts, then it goes to zero, right? You follow me? Okay, so
No, I'm trying to think of a
gravity. Okay, so surface of space-time.
I guess what I'm trying to get past is, people will say, well, this is just electromagnetism. You know what I mean? If we're talking about magnetism or electromagnetism, is that really anti-gravity? Or
No, we're not talking about magnetism. This is an engineering solution. I said
it's negative 240
246 gigaelectron volts.
Yeah. Is that in the vacuum of space with zero G's or on Earth?
Zero. Nope. That's
what I'm saying. Like on Earth, you have more gravity.
Well, okay, but we're just talking about in a vacuum at the quantum level.
So you're talking about the 4C, which is the temperature of space-time.
Okay, yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I'm just saying in a vacuum. I'm just going by, in a vacuum, they say the Higgs field value is 246 gigaelectron volts. And that
would translate to the 4 degrees.
Okay.
Like the
I'm not
coldest
really
the universe
sure.
gets is like 4 degrees Celsius, I think. And that relates
Okay.
to the background energy that's creating every spot in space-time. And so that
Okay.
would have to translate into what you're talking about.
Okay. The one thing that you'll probably find is that my solution, right, is very mechanically derived. So like you're talking about like degrees and this and that or whatever, like if I was to learn that and see that and I could see whether it would fit or something like that, I could do that. But when I talk about anti-gravity, it's like I only know what I needed to know to do it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, and I get
So
that. And I want to just bring up for the viewers that might have a really hard time with a negative energy density. You could also say that negative temperatures also exist. And a really good example of that is done in the YouTube channel Action Lab, where he talks about negative temperature and how you can actually have that. Because if you have a point source, and for example, the sunlight, you can never use the sun and use a lens to create more energy from a lens than the sun is creating itself. But if you have a laser, a point source shooting out energy, then that's actually a negative temperature. And you can focus a point source with a magnifying lens to create a higher temperature than that's coming from the source to begin with. For example, you can get a laser pointer, shine it through a lens, and focus the laser into a point. Now you're getting energy from negative temperature. And so what you're talking about is a negative field, essentially, that's manifesting gravity, essentially. And I think that, to me, that makes a lot of sense. That's all I'm trying to say in different
yeah,
ways.
no, I mean,
Yeah.
and so, but when you think about the Higgs field, and the reason I like talked about leashing the matter and energy to the surface is if you think about the Higgs field and the negative energy density is like the pull in the string, right? It's the pull that's holding everything to our instant of time. It's holding your mass here. Well, if that's negative energy density and the electrons say they're like sticking to it, so to speak, right? That's not really, I mean, just if this helps clarify, say the left-handed electrons are sticking to that leash. And if that leash is negative and I can shake positive energy, positive cancels negative. And essentially you can essentially zero out the energy of gravity that's holding on to stuff. Does that make sense? If the quantum field is negative energy density that's holding people and gravity and things together, and you know those electrons are hanging onto that field, if you can get them to put positive energy in, you can drop it to what they call the ground state and it's zero, and then there's no gravity. That's sort of the clearest I can think to say it. And so if you think of inside this field, right, there's gravity in the field and the gravity is negative, right? So now if I can shake positive energy through the left-handed electron into the Higgs field, and I can drop it to the ground state, and then everything has to lose its mass. Because Dr. O'Dowd said the Higgs field gives matter mass, the left-handed electron is holding on to the Higgs field. If the Higgs field is negative and I can shake positive energy into it, then gravity goes to zero and everything has to lose its mass.
You know what's funny? What's funny is this background here is a signed poster that Bob Lazar signed for me. And if you could see it, you could see his little anti-gravity generator in the middle. He talks about something similar to this. I don't know if you've ever watched.
Really? No, I've never heard of it. Never heard of him.
This is the sport model drawing right here is at the background. So I always thought Bob, I know I take a lot of heat because I always liked Bob. But I mean, honestly, the things that he talks about are really not any more far out than right. I mean, the way you have to get there, it's just like you're saying, right? There's a way that you have to get there. You know, you got to get there somehow. And he describes a similar method, just using different. Well, he talks about using element 115 and that kind of
Yeah,
thing.
see, I don't know if you can't explain it, if you don't know your craft.
Well, just
then-
because I can't explain it doesn't mean he
no,
can't
but I mean,
explain
I'm
it.
saying
Yeah.
him. Like I'm saying, I've heard a
No,
lot.
he explains it very well. You just
Oh, does he?
most people don't want to listen.
They have a
I
hard
mean,
time with it. But then he spoke of element, was it 115 or whatever it was, but before it was even like admitted to exist.
Before it was a thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think he kind of was like a Walter Mitty, right? He like made up a bunch of stuff about himself.
No, I mean the thing that
was a
people
good
miss
movie.
about Bob Lazar is that he's an actual scientist. I mean, right now you can call up United Nuclear, and he's doing work in a lab. He's creating chemistry. He has a business where he creates chemicals for companies that buy. You know what I mean? He's an actual scientist. He works in a,
Yeah.
When I ordered this, this poster, he answers the phone. He not always, but
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't know
there.
him. I don't know.
You can call him up and order supplies from him.
Really?
That if you're a chemist or you need laboratory, or he's got these companies that he sells these concoct, these chemicals that he mixes up. But I
don't know him. I don't know him.
I didn't want anyone to get off on a Bob Lazar rant. I'm just saying that it's interesting. I'm sorry, I shouldn't even have brought it up, but it's the background. It's his drawing, his diagram for the sport model is the background. I thought it's kind of funny, but some of the things you all are talking about are similar. I just noticed some of the similarities. But so if you are, the reason I wanted to bring it up too, also, so if you're in that sport model, how do you get that Higgs field to go to the ground state? Like mechanically, how do you do that?
That's what I was just getting to. So
that's what I was trying to get to. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So you have your Faraday disc. Now the Faraday disc looks like this. Now the magnetic field blows through the Faraday disc, comes back around this way, comes back this way. Okay. So you got your disc, it blows out, it goes back around, and it comes back through. Now, and that's where our magnetic field is. That's where our left-handed electrons that are holding on to the Higgs field are, and all that kind of stuff. Now, so let's talk about energy. So when you put energy, when you use your microwave oven and you heat your food, right? What it's doing is it's bombing your food. It's bombarding it with microwaves. Microwaves are not really powerful. They're not ionizing, means they don't like break stuff, but they hit it and they bounce and they make it jiggle. They jiggle your food. And that jiggling is heat. Now, if it jiggles too hard, right, you'll break those bonds and it'll release energy, and that's what flames are, and that's how you burn your food and stuff like that. But when you bombard your food with microwaves, the microwaves hit and it jiggles your food, and that puts heat, that puts energy into your food. It heats it up. Now, so I got to do the same thing. I got to jiggle them left-handed electrons. That's how you do it. You got to jiggle the left-handed electrons, just like you jiggle your food when you heat it in a microwave. And if the Higgs field's holding on to them left-handed electrons, and I'm jiggling those left-handed electrons, that's putting that energy right in the Higgs field. So the way we do that is with that oscilloscope that's up there. So my disc is actually like a circuit board, which is full of copper. It's a copper disc on the top and a copper disc on the bottom. The bottom one, I run a constant field that goes, it's just constantly going. It's a 2-channel oscilloscope, and the oscilloscope is sending a signal through the disc, and it's a constant. One of the discs is constant, so there's a constant magnetic field. The other channel is shooting a signal through the disc that goes. It's a harmonic. It's a pulsing, right? And so what we're going for is we're taking these left-handed electrons and I'm polarizing the field to keep everything nice and steady, to keep the field there and all that. So the electrons have something.
A DC current?
Yeah, it's both DC. They're both DC.
Okay.
So I mean, it like runs AC into a transformer, and then it goes. Yeah, it's a DC current, and one of them is a constant polarizing field that just keeps everything steady, keeps everything orbiting, and then the top of the disc is a harmonic one, and it goes bip 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 bip, bip, and I can change it to kilohertz or megahertz or whatever.
Wouldn't that act as an AC though? If you're doing like a constant pulse, even if you're going to positive zero, positive zero, positive zero, that's still kind of like AC. But you're doing that with a DC current, is what you're saying?
Well, AC would run in two directions. The DC would run in one direction.
Yeah, it just.
But if you're pulsing a DC, it's kind of acting like an AC, is what I'm saying.
Well, no, because like the Faraday disc, right? It's a DC system. It's like it goes from the middle of the disc to the.
It's a directional
I get
current.
that. I get that.
Yeah. So because when you talk about AC, you're talking about the current going back and forth like that.
Right.
You see what I mean?
That's how you
That's
get
what
your
AC
60
is.
cycles.
I always saw that as the pulse rate. Not necessarily back and forth, but more the pulse rate.
But alternating current is a back and forth. It's 60
that's how they
times.
describe it. It's more of an, from my understanding, it's more of an on and off. But I don't know. We'll just move forward. Sorry. Yeah.
No, it's cool. I mean, but AC, at least, I mean, I've only had a few circuits classes, but electrical engineering classes, but like AC means the current like kind of goes forward and backwards. Like that's what happens to the current. And this is totally DC. It's going from the middle of the disc, or it's going from the outer edge of the disc down around to the middle. So that's where the flow is. So so the bottom one has a polarizing field, right? It stays there the whole time. And then the top one is a harmonic field, and it's bumping. And so what I'm trying to do to achieve a symmetry break with the Higgs field is I'm taking them left-hand electrons that are in my field, and I'm pushing them like a kid on a swing, right? I push them, and they go out, they come back, I push them again. They go out, they come back, I push them again. And if I do it enough, or if I do it at just the right frequency, you can achieve what you call resonance. And if your loading condition, your loading frequency matches the system frequency, like essentially if you push the swing goes out and comes back, and you push it at the same time it comes back every time, then you build up energy in the system, you build up, and you can break the system that way. That's what resonance is called. And so now, if you push a kid on a swing and then you push when they're like right at the bottom, right, and you fuck it up, you know what I mean?
Push
like,
the wrong way, right?
Yeah, or you push the wrong way, then you don't achieve it. You keep sapping the energy. It's not efficient.
So you could say the kid hanging on a swing would be the same as like a pendulum just hanging there. And so you want to hit that pendulum every time it's
right when it gets to the back,
as it's hitting that, as it comes here.
No, as it comes back, you want to shove it. You let it go out and come back, and you shove it again.
Exactly.
If you can shove it at the right time, you can just keep building that energy in the system, and you won't cancel any of it. And you can, and if it's negative energy density, if you add enough energy into that, you drop it to the ground state, and everything in the field has to be go massless. Which is why it's a harmonic field. Now, if you put my video on again, it goes right through a frequency. Now you'll see that it's like 49 pounds or something like that. And it's sitting there and it's kind of shaking. And then all of a sudden the fucking thing swings light, and then it comes back. Now look at where it is. This is not a kind of vibration where it swings heavier. It's not like a doing where it like swings heavier and lighter. It only goes lighter, then it comes right back down. You see that? So the way I interpret that is that I glimpsed that resonant frequency and then lost it.
From 49 pounds, are those pounds?
Yep.
Or those kilograms? The black measurement?
No, those are pounds.
So
those
from
are
49 pounds to 47 pounds.
Something like that. But hey, but it went way lighter than that, because
before you renew Amazon Prime, watch this. Look, I love Amazon Prime. Free 2-day shipping is great.
I'm not gonna watch that. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's cool.
Oh man, dang it. Oh well.
No, but if you look at my rig, you look at that rig up there, right? There's an amp. Now, so I don't just do it with the you know, the nanovolts that my the Faraday disc generates, you know, nanovolts essentially of electricity. I
would have
take
thought
a
you'd be
car
able to get
stereo.
milliwatts out of it. Can't get
Yeah.
milliwatts out.
Well, you get milliamps and you get
Milliamps.
millivolts.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
So you get nanowatts. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So you get nanowatts. But so that's why I hooked up that car stereo. It's a 3,500 watt car stereo amp. And I run my oscilloscope through the amp, and then it has to run through this sort of field of resistors. So I don't
thought the
blow it up.
oscilloscope would read, was a measuring tool, not a transmission.
No,
tool.
I use it to drive. I use it to drive the signal.
So most people use it as a measuring device, right?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not trying to measure the Faraday disc that I'm not trying to measure the voltage or the amperage that I'm creating with that disc. I'm only using the disc. The only reason the disc is there is to shape the field, because I want it to blow through the surface. You know what I mean? Because the Faraday disc has that sweet field geometry. And so that's why I'm
the
using
one that's got the magnets all the way around. It has a nice bell curve geometry of electric potential.
Well,
it creates that field. It creates that nice magnetic field. What I need is a nice, orderly, you know, field, nice field structure.
What if you just got a magnet and just? No, I'm sorry. I know that you.
No, go ahead.
I'm not trying to be rude anyway. Like,
no, it's good.
What if you got like a really powerful magnet and you got a piece of metal and shaped it into the field you want? Could you just stick a magnet to the bottom of a piece of metal and get the similar results?
I don't know, man. I have no idea. I mean, I told you how I came up with mine, right?
Well, my next question was, how do you calculate the amount of weight you can displace?
I don't.
So, I mean, that's what I'm thinking. Now you have to take a craft and figure out whatever weight.
Step by step is what he's been saying, right? So that would be one of the next steps.
No. I mean, the mass, the weight shouldn't matter. The only thing that matters is the field enveloping it.
I was going to say it had to be part of the field, right?
Yeah, is whatever's inside the field. If I get the field and then I get the frequency right so that I hit resonance, everything in the field, doesn't matter what it is weightless. Do you see what I mean? It has to, I mean, because what we're talking about, we're not talking about, I'm not talking about
some oars to steer.
Yeah, I mean, no. Well, we can talk about how you steer.
Well, that's where you would turn off one magnet and change the shape of that perfect centered bell curve.
Well, so
magnetic oars.
Are you guys cool with that? Did we cover that? Are you guys good with?
No, I got it. I was just trying to figure out how do you connect the actual craft to the. And then I realized it had to be inside the field.
Yeah, but here's the thing. So the disc for a craft, right? Now, if you look at and this is when I fucking realized, I was like, oh shit, this is fucking how it works. Because
let's try to hold down the F-bombs.
Oh, sorry, man. Sorry.
That's okay.
Well, so yeah, my bad.
No, it's okay. I mean, I'm on the construction site, but YouTube didn't understand our talk, our kind of speech, right?
Well, so hey, check it out. So if you go on the Sonic Gravity podcast page, then you can find an episode that's called Disclosure Supremacy. Now, on the podcast art of that, there's this black like ring of what looks like graphene, looks like some kind of black fabric material, and it's a ring. And then I realized, oh man, that's how it works. That's because the biggest problem I had was, how do you steer? Like, if I'm inside the craft and I'm massless, I can't push on anything. How do I steer anything? I can't steer anything. It doesn't work. It can't work.
And you wonder the moment you become massless, then are you floating? Are you accelerating?
I know it's gnarly. What happens? And I was like, I have to figure this out, or it can't be right.
That's why you have good postures in mind, body, spirit.
because the earth is the
mind controls at that point.
Well, that's when I figured it out. It's not a solid disc; it's a hoop. it's a hoop. And so if you just have a hoop and you just have the magnetic field going out of the hoop, all of the middle there's no magnetic field there because it's blown through the surface of the disc, which is essentially, if you have this hoop like this, then it's only blowing out like this. It's going up and it's coming out like this. Now, if you take another one and put it perpendicular and you run it like this, now you have a magnetic field like this, and then you have a magnetic field like this, and now inside the field you have your mass. You're not messed with, but there's this boundary. There's this boundary of masslessness. So you're sitting here, but nothing can push on you because nothing comes through that anti-gravity field. And that's why you can be in the craft pushing buttons and doing stuff and you're not messed with, but then there's a field of anti-gravity around you which insulates you from any forces anywhere else. And so you're really sitting in this bubble of sort of space-time where you're disconnected, you're essentially quantumly disconnected sort of from
caught
the
up
space.
though. You're caught up in that bubble, right?
Yeah, you're inside the bubble.
You're inside. Okay.
You're inside the bubble.
But wouldn't you start accelerating at the speed of space-time? If you were in
anything that's in that field is massless and oscillating at the speed of light. Yes, that's true. But see, here's the thing.
I was going back to that image of space-time passing through. I was like, all of a sudden now you just take off with space-time.
No.
You're in a river now. You're in a
because you're still leashed because there's still hologram where you're at, right? You're still on the hologram.
Well,
and there's gravity.
Bubbles typically rise, right?
What's that?
If you're in a two-dimensional hologram, but stacked three-dimensionally, like how kind of everyone's been talking about in this podcast, and you create a bubble. Bubbles typically rise, is all I'm saying.
Only if you have difference in pressure, though, right? The bubbles rise, right, because you have difference in pressure.
The center point surfaces create a bubble within.
You're talking about buoyancy, right?
I am talking about buoyancy at this point.
Okay.
Yeah. So bubbles will rise, but buoyancy only exists because there is gravity to begin with. But ultimately, when you're cutting off the gravity you're talking about, is that gravity of our dimension, or is that gravity
quantum gravity? It's time gravity.
Is that so? That's what I was about to say. Is it gravity of all dimensions? There's a difference. Yeah.
No, I think. Okay, so
let me ask you this right quick before I lose this vision. If our whole galaxy or our whole universe is moving through space-time, it seems to me that if you become immune to that, then all of a sudden you're going to accelerate at whatever rate that is opposite of the acceleration of our universe.
Yeah, that might be true if we lived in a three-dimensional universe.
It is. We do live in a three-dimensional.
I don't think so, man. I mean,
that's how that works. That's how.
That is why I say we're inches from the stars. Is because of what you just said, Artisan. Straight up.
Yeah, that's how I visualize it.
If you, but it. Well,
I can't help it. I mean, you can't help it.
It's three-dimensional at every dimensional level. That's what's challenging, in my opinion. It's three-dimensional at every dimensional level. We have our X, Y, and Z. Now, we also have our T, whatever. Let's kind of skip that one for now. But then as you start to move, so that's all being projected from a layer, our X, Y, Z, and T. And now when you start to move through the layers, there's X, Y, Z, and T as well. So it's dimensions upon dimensions of three-dimensional. It's hard to describe. That's why.
Well, I think you're right.
I guess what I'm saying is that once you become part inside this bubble, you have to be more concerned about how you're steering in relation to space-time and not the universe you're in. Right.
Right. Well, let me tell you how I think that.
Because then you're trying to move around based on You're trying to move around with the universe. Now.
Well, no. I think you are held. Okay, so this is why I call there's a quantum remainder and then there's a quantum echo, right? And so once you essentially cut the the Higgs field, right? Essentially, you had mass, right? And now you just reduced it to the ground state, right? So there's nothing holding your mass to this, or inside the field, there's nothing holding that mass. So there's an interpretation, which I think is pretty much the standard, that we're actually moving through time at the speed of light. So if the Higgs field is reduced to the ground state, can't hold that mass to our instance of Planck time, it gets left in the past. And so now you have this mass, and say it goes like one sheet to the past. Well, it can't go there because of conservation of mass energy. Because if there's another sheet of time, it's governed by the law of conservation of mass energy, and you can't add energy to that time, right? So it goes back further. It goes back further. It goes back further. Now we know that tension in that string, because we didn't cut the string, we just reduced the energy to the ground state. But as it goes back through time, there's not a field anymore, like reducing it to the ground state anymore over here. And so it's building tension as it stretches back. And that tension, remember, is gravity. And gravity is negative energy density. And the mass that we just shot out of our time is positive energy, E equals mc squared. So M, the mass that we just got rid of, times c squared, is the total energy that goes backwards in time. And it's going to go exactly as far back as the tension, the negative energy density in the Higgs string that stretches. The heavier, the further it stretches back in time, the further it goes, the more negative energy density is. And it's going to go as far back in time as it needs to balance that positive energy to zero. And that's when
my intuition just told me, though, that once we become part of that bubble, the universe, the space-time is like the master clock, right? Now you're part of the master clock, and everybody on their little planets are now looking at you. As far as there's where relativity comes into play, right? They're moving at their speeds versus the master clock. Maybe now you're part of the master clock, and the other planets are moving in their own relationship to the master clock. Does that make sense?
The master clock exists beyond our perception, though, right? Because humans' limitation is relative to the speed of light. And so that's where we have our dimension.
I'm saying once you're part of this anti-gravity bubble.
That's what I'm saying, is that the master clock exists within all the layers, right? All those layers.
It permeates them.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the way I imagine.
Brings them all together is that master clock.
Yeah.
Right. Well, you could say this the clock of infinity.
Because I don't look at I look at our universe as an entity inside. I don't think it's I think our universe is here, and what our universe was created in was into the master space, right? And so master space has the master clock, and our universe is moving. And maybe when we become part of that bubble, we become part of the master clock or something. I don't know. You know what I mean? I don't know. I'm not scientifically trained. I'm saying this is what my intuition tells me, or maybe it's my imagination.
That's what I was about to ask, Brad. Like, what happens instead of adding? You're talking about adding negative energy density. Correct?
No, positive.
Sorry, 63 positive energy density, or whatever number. What was the number? Sorry.
246 gigaelectron volts is the consensus value of the Higgs field.
And you're saying the Higgs, but that's actually a negative. So you're saying by adding,
I think it's negative,
we end up hitting the 0 point.
Yep. And so when I shake that, just like you heat your food in your microwave, when I shake those left-handed electrons that I caught in my magnetic field that Dr. Lawrence Ease says are going like this, when I shake those with 246 gigaelectron volts of positive energy, in that boundary, it drops that to the ground state. Now, those atoms start oscillating at the speed of light, and their time stops, which means they stay in our time. So we don't like zip off into some crystal clock or anything. I think we stay in our instance of time, because I think the strong nuclear force holds
if it's at zero. If it's at zero, right?
But the strong nuclear force is still unaffected. Is unaffected by what we're doing. It's the strong nuclear force is still holding all the atoms together. So I think the strong nuclear force is what keeps us from zipping off into
But couldn't we be talking about the physics that that there could be universal physics that we're not aware of, and once
That's,
we become
well, there's
become
like
Maybe I'm
variation.
just going by what I think.
become,
I'm just going by
when
what
we
I think.
become part of the anti-gravity bubble, all of a sudden those physics apply to us somehow instead of the physics.
I think the physics are the same. I really do. I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't know how to analyze that any differently. You may be right. But I wouldn't know how to do it. This is what I think.
Well,
I think once we create that anti-gravity field and we harmonically excite at the right level, we drop the Higgs field to the ground state inside that field, and then that mass goes back in time, and it's a positive energy that we just ejected out of our time, and it goes as far back as it takes for the tension in the Higgs string to balance the positive amount of energy.
Why does it have to go back in time? Why can't it just not join the master time instead of going back in time?
it is part of the it's moving back in time within the master time.
I mean, it's inertia, right? It's like if we're going through time at the speed of light, and then the tension
I
in
get
the Higgs field that
Alexei's the great moderator. He's the arbitrator.
I don't know. I'm just saying, like, if time is moving forward, because time's moving forward. If time's moving forward, and you're no longer
frozen in time, so you're saying frozen in time would be the negative 246.
Our massless components of our atoms are frozen in time. Yes, they're frozen in time with us. Now,
at 246 hertz, you would be frozen in time with the greater time.
Fuck, man, I don't know.
I mean, it could be that the master clock is always reached 12 o'clock, and that the other clocks are just relative to, right? Just compare itself to those. To the master
well, I
clock.
do know.
So I just don't like this going back in time business. I don't think there's a big database.
Are we getting distracted, or should we focus more on the actual device itself?
Well, but this is what I think. This is more fun. This is what I think happens, and this is why I think that when we view these UFOs, we're seeing them in the future. We're seeing future humans in these quantum craft, because the mass has to go somewhere. The mass can't just go away.
I don't think they're future humans. I think they're just more advanced humans.
Yeah, but here's the thing: is that if time, we're talking about time like it's slices of cheese,
because there's only now, right, Artisan?
Right.
Yeah,
that's the way I look at it.
For even people in the future, it's still in the now.
If you're right, if there's
those
only
are the people
now,
those are the people that took off. Well,
you can say if there's only now. Some people think all time exists, all for everyone, all the time at the same time. Some people think all time exists at the same time.
A great moment of superposition.
No, but I do believe that I do believe in time dilation, though. I just think that people don't. The human mind can't keep up with all the different dilations, so we perceive it as time travel. But really, if we could perceive everyone's time, we would realize that it's linear. We're just displacing ourselves from each other in time. We're not going backward or forward in time. We're just displacing ourselves in time.
Well, let me just tell you one thing, and you can disagree with Einstein if you want.
I'm not. I don't think I am disagreeing with it.
No, Einstein's recipe, the ER paper, his recipe for point-like wormholes that connect two exact places in space at two different times is masslessness wrapped in energy.
I wasn't thinking. Yeah, I was exempting wormholes from the argument.
Yeah, well, no, this is a wormhole. That's why this is Einstein's recipe. Einstein-Rosen's recipe for a wormhole is essentially masslessness just wrapped in negative energy density.
Right.
That's Einstein-Rosen said that is a wormhole that is a point-like wormhole that connects two exact places in space, the exact same place in space at two different times.
But that's time folded onto itself.
No, that's just negative energy density. Like that's just
the wormhole was space-time folded, right? So you're connecting 2 points at opposite points in space-time, but it's like taking a shortcut. But see, to me, that's contact. That the wormhole would be access to a different dimension or universe, right?
Different time,
which would be a different. That's what I'm saying. To me, right? Though they perceive a different time than we do because of.
Okay, but what I'm saying is, if you the model is exactly the same. If you take, remember this.
There you go.
If you take the slices of cheese, right, from the beginning of time to the end of time, and if you create that harmonic electromagnetic field that reduces the Higgs to the ground state, that mass goes back in time and it gets balanced with the tension in the negative energy density coming from the stretch in that Higgs string.
How do you say the beginning of time or the end of time
I'm just saying
there is no beginning or end if it's infinite, right?
Well, the Big Bang, right? There was a Big Bang.
The time existed before the Big Bang. The Big Bang was just how our universe was created, which is not the only entity in the master space. It's just another, right? Timing.
I'm
just
saying
time
the slice of cheese to the beginning of time. I'm not saying that there's a finite amount of mass, right? Like, I don't know if it's like
in our universe,
ton. No, I'm talking about the craft. I'm talking about the craft that goes massless.
Okay.
It has to go back in space, or it has to go back in time. And it goes exactly to the point where the tension, the negative energy density in the Higgs string balances the exact mass of the craft.
Totally.
That's the only place it can land in the multiverse because it has to be a net zero.
That's why I think the idea of layers within the black hole is a really good way to describe it. So when you're using that positive energy density, push you back into time, you're actually moving into a less dense realm of creation.
Using the fishbowl analogy.
That's how I describe that. Yeah.
To me, using the fishbowl analogy, if you had like a scoop that you could reach in and scoop and encase the fish, and you pulled it out, right? Now he's immune to the fishbowl time. His little capsule is now part of the master time, right?
Yeah, and the easier way to look at that would be to just take your face off the fishbowl, draw a circle on the fishbowl. Everything inside that circle.
I wanted to abduct the fish out of the fishbowl.
But now take that fishbowl, draw a circle. Now that's a tube that goes back this way to the past. You're on the fishbowl, draw a circle.
Now it connects to a bigger fishbowl.
Now all of a sudden, the piece that was in the middle of that circle stretches away from the fishbowl. Okay, that's a different time.
In a cone shape.
Because space-time is blowing out of the black hole. It goes back to the past, back to here. You see what I'm saying?
And I spiritually disagreeing with the past, but I get what you're saying. I understand.
I'm just trying to go with the fishbowl. I'm just trying to use the fishbowl.
No, I know. I can't. Because when you say the past, you have to have a coordinate system. To say you can't just say the past without saying
it's distance. It's distance across the slices of cheese.
I can go for distance. I just can't.
Well, remember we talked about like you stack them all end to end.
What direction would you call that?
But distance, as we've seen by folding space time, that distance doesn't necessarily relate to.
Would you call that a direction of energetic density?
You could, I totally get what you're saying.
Yeah,
say that again.
Because he said you're going back in the slices of cheese. What does that actually translate into in a physical experience within our dimension? It's less dense realms of electromagnetic.
Well, see, if the cheese has a consistent distance between each slice, then going
from a certain perspective,
it doesn't tell you how that doesn't describe time. It describes distance.
Yeah, but distance is time.
I could go to the last piece of cheese really slow, or I could go to this last piece of cheese really fast. Right?
It's challenging.
Yeah.
It's challenging. I get what you're saying, Artisan. I get what you're saying, Brad. Totally. I want to throw in real quick.
I'm not going to sit here and claim to be as qualified to. This is all again just intuition. I have no idea scientifically. I'm not trying to debate you, Brad. In other words,
no, it's fine. No, but this is a rich topic for discussion. Yeah. Now, the only thing that I'm saying is that if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I looked at them. I said, hey, look, they're massless. They have to be massless, or they would pancake under their own acceleration. Fact. Whether it's a person in it or a drone, doesn't matter. It would just be pancaked. I mean, this is my thought, right? So this is how I came to it. So then I was like, it's got to be massless. What causes mass? I found out it is the Higgs field. That's a fact. And then what hangs on to the Higgs field? How do I get a hold of it? It's the left-handed electron. That's a fact too. Created a Faraday disk, found Dr. Lawrence Eves' research. This is how you catch left-handed electrons. And so then I thought about it and I think, you know what? I think gravity is negative energy density. I think if I put positive energy density into that field, I can reduce it to the ground state and make everything massless in the field. And so that's how I did it. And so if you show that video, there's a frequency that my harmonic field is pushing. And I think I just got a glimpse of that resonant frequency, and that's why it swings up and then it came back down.
Do you okay, based on what you just said, do you think you have too high of a resonant frequency within the natural harmonic of it? Or do you think you have, do you get what I'm saying? Like, because there's the first, the second, the third, the fourth harmonic. Which harmonic do you think you actually hit in relation to the greater vortex?
It's probably hard to maintain a certain resonance with the materials that were, human-made materials.
That's the thing, is that I don't have the precision in the manufacturing that I need to start like really nailing frequencies, stuff like that. I mean, I made that on my kitchen table.
For precision, like angstrom, like Planck level precision is kind of, is that?
Yeah. I don't have any of that. What I have is proof of concept. That's all I have. I mean, I turned it on, it got a little lighter.
Is there anything else you want to add about the actual device that you've been working on? So you've talked about the hexagonal structure of the graphene, or of molecular structure in general, and then you talked about how when you push a magnetic field through it, you get negative electrons.
Not
negative electrons, left-handed electrons.
Left-handed, yeah. But it's kind of in some ways the same thing. I think it's a positron too, because I think the hologram goes like this. It's an electron, it's a positron, it's an electron, it's a positron, and so when we separate it out, when it goes through that all it's doing is kind of spread them out.
Because electrons themselves are negatively charged, right?
Is there any other aspect of the actual device that you want to talk about?
And whatever you guys want to talk about.
Is that the premises right there?
That's anti-gravity. That's now Tony was talking about how do you steer?
Simple as possible for everyone that's been watching for like the 2 hours. Yeah,
that's it. But to steer,
it's in the title.
Right? But to steer, like, and to motivate it to drive it and stuff, you use what I think you use is directional microwaves, because now you have if what we're talking about, if I'm right, if this bubble is a vacuum, it's a mass hole, right? And so the universe is trying to shove mass into it. This is Casimir forces. This is 0-point energy.
Yeah.
So the universe is trying to cram stuff in because from quantum fluctuations, it knows, hey, there's no mass there. So the universe is pushing super hard all around on this field, trying to get stuff in there. Well, so if you take directional microwaves and like say you want to go forward, you take directional microwaves from inside where there's no field, where you have your mass and all that, and you shoot microwaves through the front of your ship.
I get that. Yeah.
Well, now the universe is going to go, oh, there's a little something here in the front, so we don't have to push so hard on the front. And now there's a differential pressure between the front and the back. So I think
creates a motion in a certain direction.
Yeah. Totally. So it's pushing harder on the back than it is on the front. And so I think that the way they fly is with directional microwaves, and essentially you shoot them and it's like a fucking tractor beam. Oh, sorry. And it's like a tractor beam, and they fly in the direction of those microwaves. And you'll see a lot of UFOs.
You're kind of creating like an internal wing where because when you blow air over the top of, you create difference in pressure in it.
Totally.
Right. Makes it rise. Right.
This is quantum lift in the direction that you shoot whatever you're shooting. Do you shoot those microwaves? And you'll see there are a lot of experiencers who come away with, oh, this thing like flew right at me, and they got RF burns, they got microwave burns and stuff from these things. I think it's because they steer them, they drive them with those microwave emitters. It makes perfect sense. Like when microwave
emitters in general would, when it actually hits our dimension or our layer, would translate into either a gamma wave or a super long radio wave, depending on direction of travel.
Okay.
Do you get what I'm saying there?
It could maintain
because if you have a
microwave
pushing at you at light speed, it's going to turn into a gamma wave, like a high energy wave. If you have a microwave emitter going away from you at the speed of light, it's going to look like a super long radio wave source.
Okay.
Do you get what I'm saying with that?
Yeah, no, I mean, I definitely understand. I think I understand
Like
what
the
you're
relative
saying.
motions of the object actually emitting the microwaves compared to an observer standing still on Earth would either be experiencing a microwave when the object is sitting still, it'd be experiencing a gamma wave if it's coming towards them, it'd be experiencing a extremely long radio wave if it's going away from them.
Okay.
Really, you're just trying to create interference on the bubble, right?
Yep, you're just trying to manipulate the quantum vacuum, just so there's a little something in the direction. There's something in the field that relieves a teeny bit of the pressure. And remember, since you're massless, it just takes a teeny weeny bit to like make you take off like a shot, like instantaneous velocity. And so just having a teeny bit of microwaves in one particular direction would just send you off like a rocket, which is really kind of gnarly, because now you got to think about like how you gonna, I mean, think of the control systems that you would need to like balance those microwave emissions. You know what I mean? Like that's, I mean, you're talking about being able to like, I mean, talking about sensitive, you know, I mean, who knows? I don't know. Maybe they don't get rid of all the mass just so there's like something there to slow it down, or I don't know. But it's going to be really interesting. There's got a lot of work that needs to be done, but I think that's the concept. That's how you create.
I want to bring up a secondary concept, and I don't want to take any time on it really, just present it to you to see what you think.
Sure.
But before I do that, is there anything else you want to add about your device that you think is like
whatever you want to know? I mean, whatever you guys want to know. I can't think of anything.
Don't tease us and then make us go back to the.
No, that's what I was saying. Off the top of my head,
I'm talking to Alexei. What are you talking? What were you going to say? What were you going to talk about?
There's two ways. Well, there's probably infinite ways, but you said make mass zero is one way to go faster than light, right? You said you make the effective mass
going faster
zero.
than light, right?
Now you can actually accelerate at the speed of light or faster when it comes to these UFO machines or whatever you want to call them. I'm saying that.
Okay, so this, I don't know. Accelerated the speed of light, like, because the speed of light is velocity.
In order to have the acceleration.
Yeah.
Force,
You
make
like
mass
a buttload of
zero,
acceleration.
now F equals A, and you don't have to really worry about the mass in a way.
Well, but remember though, because it's not additive, right? It multiplies. So force equals mass, times acceleration. So if the mass is almost zero, right, then it takes almost no force to go really fast. Like, because then your acceleration would be F divided by M.
That's what I was trying to do the reverse.
F divided by M.
My head. It'd be
like a teeny little force divided by almost zero.
A equal to F over M.
Acceleration. What's that?
Is it A equal to F over? What was it? What would it be?
Yeah. A equals F over M.
Okay.
So if your mass is almost zero, it only takes a teeny bit of force to just like have a wicked high acceleration.
So that's one way to think of it.
Mm-hmm.
Another way to think of it is 1/2 past and 1/2 future. So what if you could move the energy of your past and the energy of your future to create the now moment, which has been shifted a certain direction and a certain distance? That's how so when it comes to like, you've taken a different approach, but we both have like the same understanding. Like, so what if instead of making M equal to 0, you move the past and you move the future?
Okay, well, so we have a structural difference between how we're approaching this stuff. So when I talk about achieving masslessness, right, then the analysis and sort of the engineering is strangely begins at the quantum level. How do we reduce the Higgs to the ground state at the quantum level? But it scales up back to sort of a classical physics problem.
Yes.
Because now because the way we do it is by grabbing these electrons, and we're grabbing more than one. We're grabbing like a massive amount of electrons inside this field. So now we're back up at this classical scale, right? Because at the very quantum level, yes, it's it's a left-handed electron, and yes, if we shake it, it reduces the Higgs to the ground state in that teeny little, voxel or pixel on the hologram. But what we're doing, we're blowing this up into a three-dimensional field. And so now we're really back at a very big scale, even though what we're doing is transacting uniformly at the quantum level by shaking energy into the Higgs field. So, but now when I'm talking about like firing a directional microwave to generate Casimir propulsion, right? Manipulating the quantum vacuum, I'm at a very sort of macro level now. And so you're talking about, when you talk about folding time and all that, I see that transacting at the quantum level still. But when we're talking about
our dimension, it's quantum.
Yeah. So, but see, now I'm talking about flying a ship, right? And so I'm talking about, I need microwaves. It needs to be massless. And so I don't have any way to get, I don't know of any way to somehow transact what you're saying at the quantum level in a engineering way. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know how to do
sense.
that.
One way to think of it might be, so when you scrolled through your frequencies and you hit the resonant frequency that made you drop 2 pounds, I'm just using a very generic example. Potentially that was the resonant frequency of our now, meaning our dimension, our relative layer of this quantum state, of this holographic universe, whatever you want to.
Yeah, I think it's the frequency of a gravity wave is what I think it is. Yeah, because it was around a kilohertz. It was around a kilohertz.
One that was one time. So we have our realm. We also have in my opinion, we have an outer realm. We also have an inner realm. What if instead of focusing on our realm, you focused on the outer and inner realms? And instead of making one go out, you move both of them. Did that make any sense?
When you say one go out, what are you talking about? Like,
instead of making okay, so let's say we have past realm, which is just slightly less dense, future realm slightly more dense. We have our realm perfectly in the middle. You're working with this realm. You want mass to go to 0. So instead of making this realm add 246 gigahertz to this realm to go out,
gigaelectron volts,
you play with the inner and outer realms to go sideways, backwards, out or up. And so, like, by playing with the inner and outer realms, you focus the now moment. So you could either turn, that's what I'm getting at, is you can either turn mass to 0, or you can move the past and future to make your mass 0. Not necessarily 0, your mass stays the same the whole time, but you've moved what I call manifestation potential, because your manifestation potential of existing where you exist is based off past and future motions. So instead of making mass 0, you move the momentum of the past and future instead of the now.
I think conceptually I see I think I see what you're getting at conceptually. The trouble is like when you got to build it, right? It's just like, I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like I don't know how to build that,
That's when we get into these weird, very weird 3-dimensional. That's what I'm saying. Like,
no, I mean, dude, build it. You know what I mean? Like,
it's weird.
I think
that will get you there, in my opinion. Yeah. So
yeah.
I mean, I like your approach. I really do.
I think what you're saying, like it conceptually, it doesn't sound unreasonable. Like,
I think
I see what you're saying, but I just don't know how to build that.
Intuitively, what it does is it kind of answers the question of acceleration, right? Because once you're inside the anti-gravity bubble, if you're just moving things that are around you at the speed of light, you're not really moving at the speed of light. Is that what you're trying to get at?
What I'm really trying to get at is the problem of momentum. But momentum is an artifact of your past and future manifestation potentials. And those are all relative of the now moment. Right? But your now moment's literally being created by 1/2 past and 1/2 future. So when you learn how to work with the two halves that create the perception that creates our depth, right? So when you're working within the crystal of time itself, instead of focusing so much on now moment technology, you could be focusing on past future moment technology. I don't know if that makes
Now, wait a minute. No, but what I'm talking about, like what I'm hypothesizing happens when you ditch your mass is a present past. You're saying future past, but you may be talking about what I'm saying happens because
I think so. And that's why I'm saying like what you're talking about actually would take us to a less dense realm. Well, so what happens? What happens when you add? We're already at negative 246. What happens when you add another negative 246? You get more gravity.
You mean less
592?
You mean less gravity?
Well,
but I think maybe. But see, here's what happens. I think once you reduce the Higgs to the ground state, right? It has to go back in time. There's no other place for it to go. And it has to go back exactly as far as the tension cancels it. It's stuck there. And that's a buoyancy thing. It can't go further back because then you'd be taking energy away from time behind it.
I totally get that.
Yeah. So that's why you have this, like, this is the ER wormhole where you have the future here and it's stretching through the past and poop, here it comes out here. Now it's the exact same point on the hologram, right? It's the exact same point, but in time, it's two different times. Now I know, Tony, I'm trying to don't say something that's gonna like make you cringe. And so this is why, funny. And now it's moving through time this way, and it's dragging through time.
Tangential motion.
Yeah, but what happens here though, is like this is the past where we are, and we're seeing this future. This is the future. We're seeing this future UFO zip around masslessly because we're seeing it through the wormhole, and the wormhole's in our time because that's where the
I get that.
That's where the fun starts because that's where. Sorry, I was trying to make that sound something. But anyway, but that's when you see those UAPs and UFOs zip around. Now the funny thing is that sometimes you'll see the UFOs and they'll be bright white. You want to know why? Because it'll be dark here in your time, and it's sunlight coming through. And that's why they look huge and bright and bing and everything. And that's why sometimes you'll see some of them come out because, well, if you take one massless craft and then you take another massless craft over here, you could fly that massless craft through the wormhole, and now you're in this time traveling. Now you're a time traveler. And so it's that wormhole from the future that like another future craft could fly through, and now they're here in this time.
Would as respectfully as possible, obviously. Would you say that's time travel and not necessarily dimension travel?
That's a dimension. That's dimensional time travel. Yeah.
Falling backwards along that orbit is essentially.
Why can't you just be changing your coordinates, your point in space without changing the? I mean, we don't say just because I traveled to California and back that I change my place in time. I don't travel back in time, right?
Every time you experience an acceleration, theoretically, yeah, you do travel back in time.
Well, time dilate.
No, your time slowing down is different than traveling back in time. Right? It's the thing we talked about before. Where
I agree with that. Yeah.
It's ER. It's Einstein. Einstein says that it connects that a ER like an Einstein-Rosen bridge connects the exact same point.
It's only back in time until you compare it to the person you're being displaced, the observer that is seeing themselves go. They think you're going back in time, but their time is really faster than yours. You're not going back in time. You're just
it's always in the greater now, and that's what you were talking about. Proper time.
It's displacement. I look at it as like displacement. It's not in the observers, right? You get it.
Brad, what's the word?
This time slowing down. This one's staying right from a third observer. It would look like this one's going back in time.
I think there are a lot of people who think the exact same way you do, Tony.
Because I'm not classically trained. I'm not.
Well, I mean, I'm an engineer. I'm not a physicist. I guess, but I've taken plenty of physics courses, but as an engineer, but I'm pretty sure that Einstein and Rosen, their paper says the wormhole connects the
See,
exact same place.
I'm exempting the worm. I think the wormhole is a different thing. That's all I'm saying. You're saying
right.
maybe,
Okay. So that we just
yeah.
disagree then about that particular part. Yeah. Because I think this is exactly.
I don't think we disagree. I'm just not connecting this event with a wormhole. If I was connecting it with a wormhole where I assume that time, space time is being folded onto itself, to me, that's not really, that's displacement too. It's like a shortcut. But
yeah.
But I don't.
I mean, it's gnarly, right? I mean, like who knows who's right and who's not?
No, and I'm just saying the way I understand what you're. I think you could be a part of this anti-gravity bubble without taking part in a wormhole.
I guess all I was trying to say just now is that not only can you make mass equal to zero,
could you not? I mean, do you have to take part in a wormhole just because you're in this anti-gravity bubble?
The reason that I came to the conclusion that you have to is because the mass doesn't the energy. Okay, so you become massless if you in my my hypothesis is you become massless. That energy, now that means you just lost some energy because that mass is energy. You can't that mass can't be destroyed. It doesn't just disappear. It has to go somewhere. And I'm like, God, well, okay, the only place it can go, because it's positive energy. So the only place it can go is back in time so that tension in the Higgs string can cancel it. That's the only place. That's the only thing I could think of to figure out, because I'm trying to shoot holes in this. Like, okay, if you're massless, well, where does that energy go? Because it can't just be destroyed.
But this is where my thing goes. The thing I have about black holes is that black holes to me are like they're like a hole. They're like holes in the vacuum where energy can be traded. It's not destroyed, but it can be traded back and forth between universes or dimensions.
That's exactly what you're saying though, Brad. Like because the energy has transferred from our dimension, it pushes you into another one. Because
so are we talking about black holes or are we talking about anti-gravity?
I was trying to think of
ready to talk about that too.
I was trying to talk about a way. I was trying to solve the conservation of energy thing with the fact that if I become massless and become part of the anti-gravity bubble, then the other part of the energy still has a place to escape or go or be a part of.
And that's where Brad's saying that it goes into the past.
That's what I'm saying. It goes,
other than the past,
right? Yeah, man, I'm with you. I mean, I struggled for a long time to say, like how. Well, I wouldn't say a long time, like a day, like how to sort out where it goes. And I was just like, where could it possibly go? And I just, and then, I just sort of, started thinking. I started thinking of the time of the slices of cheese, and it goes back, and then I started seeing all these things about UFOs, about how they just kind of appear, and then all of a sudden they disappear. And it just makes a lot of sense that if you turn up that field and you create that quantum echo and it goes back into the past or whatever, and then, eventually whatever, you kill the field or whatever, and then it just disappears because your mass renormalizes. And Leonard Susskind said that
I'm just thinking we have energy conversion in our own universe all the time, right?
What do you mean energy convert? I'm sorry.
Well, you can convert energy into matter and matter into energy, right? Light
all the time. Thermal.
So what I'm saying is just because part of this energy becomes massless in the anti-gravity bubble doesn't mean there's a contradiction in conservation.
That's why I was asking. Do you think it goes back?
No, I'm asking you
back in our time, or do you think it goes into a less dense realm? Because they're one and two. They're two different things. One's more related to a tangential velocity, and the second one is more related to a distance from center.
Yeah, I mean, I just said what I think. I mean, I don't.
I'm not trying to change what you're. I just like having the discussion.
It's like really interesting. Like but I think you can. In some ways, I think. It's language, right? Like we could be talking about the exact same thing, and you're saying less dense realm, and I'm just saying past.
and it's only because I know
I describe the past as being a less dense realm as well.
I know Spanish
a,
and you know French, and I'm not understanding, right?
Yeah.
In a tangential,
I don't understand the same language that you understand. You know,
you have tangential motions, and you also have distance from center motions, right? Like orbit valence shells in one sense versus your tangential velocity. So when you say you go back in time, that could mean two different things. That could mean you went back within the tangential, from my understanding, right? Because I have a weird vortex model. So like you could either have gone back tangentially, or you could have gone into the outer less dense. They're both back in time.
Yeah, I think it's less dense. Remember, like draw the circle on the fishbowl, it stretches the tube away from
there you go. So that's the less dense realm. Yeah, I hear you. Cool.
That's
and
the past. That's the straight past, like I think of.
Yeah.
You know.
I get that. Yeah.
I just want Jesus to come back and tell me that
we gotta wait a couple thousand years.
We can't travel back in time.
I don't know. You know, it's just.
I'm just kidding.
Mathematically, you can though, right? Like no physicist, like every physicist will tell you that, like mathematically, there's solutions that show time travel is mathematically possible.
If somehow,
I mean, that's a fact.
In my mind, if you can separate the physical world, the physical reality part of that from, so I don't think there's some big database in the sky that's saving every instance of time that you can just dial back to and be part of that. If you're talking about math and you're just saying the math works, that's fine. But if you're telling me you can literally go back in the past to visit yourself when you were 2 or whatever, that's where I have a problem with it.
Because you think there are rules in the universe that say that's impossible, right?
I just don't. Yeah, I think there's too many paradoxes in that. I just don't.
Let me.
I haven't done it, so I can't tell you.
Let me bake your noodle. What if reality exists and we're just moving through it? Then, if reality just exists and we're moving through it, and if reality takes us back in time and then comes back around and then whatever, then we could just be moving through it.
I think as complex as our creator is, he probably created a universe that was more simple than that. I think he blew out. I think he blew out the ingredients for life and said, "Here's your chance to, here it is. This is what you get." I don't think, you know what I mean? And we evolved and blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. We can't go back to that point we can't go back to the Big Bang, right? I don't think so.
You're not alone in thinking that. I mean, I know a lot of people think that too.
Only because I believe in a creator, and I believe that this creation had a special, not purpose, but was created not for a reason, but for us. I don't like predetermination, so I have to be careful of my language. Right? I don't believe in, you know what I mean?
You don't think God knows the end from the beginning?
I believe we have free will, and that our reality, our universe can determine its own destination, and that's probably the big experiment, right?
I think a lot of people agree with you. I think I want to believe in free will. I do. I really.
I believe in it 100%, and so that's kind of the foundation or the root of some of my issues, right? Honestly, you probably
we did that last time. Remember?
That's what I was
about to throwing water bottles.
Go back to energy.
Get that water bottle out.
And like you have free will, but only so much. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I mean, that's where
I got plenty of stuff I can throw, but
we're like all three on this different spectrums here. Like Brad says, no free will. Ours is like
I don't say that. I want free will. I really do, but I can't. I really think the physics behind anti-gravity and what we see when we see UFOs, I just, everything I see just kind of fits there. I want free will. I'm a Christian. I really believe in free will. Like but then it's like, if I'm seeing a UFO in the future, if I'm right about the anti-gravity and the quantum echo, to where if something in the future is causing something I see right now, that means all time exists all at the same time, because that has already happened in the future. For me to see a quantum echo in my time from the future, that means in the future it's already past tense.
It's the future now.
I just think that
all time has to exist in order for me to have this theory and have the theory be right. All time has to exist at all times.
Can I interject
everywhere.
and say maybe it's not all time has to exist, but there has to be a flow of space-time at that dimensional level.
Okay.
I don't think it's that complicated. I think that
it's not.
I think Earth is a late bloomer, right? I think there's many civilizations out there that could be far more advanced a lot quicker, right? So I think that what we're seeing is just more advanced civilizations that have figured out anti-gravity, and the creator put the ingredients for anti-gravity into this universe. We haven't figured it out yet, but they have, and we might have figured it out.
And they're all on purpose flying in our military's training areas.
On purpose? They're exercising their free will to fly, you know.
And that's just the thing. Like the new UAP report, if you do kind of the math on where they were before and where they are now, they got 195 new sightings, and they let slip in that report that most of them are from military pilots talking about UAPs zipping around in our military's flight training areas.
I understand your point. I totally understand your point. At the same time, I think it's important to understand sociology in a sense. Like maybe some public pilots still aren't very comfortable in speaking of those things. I just want to bring up that.
That would mean there's even more pilots, witnesses, though.
More witnesses not existing within military zones is what I'm trying to get at. And those types of pilots have less incentive to speak because they're still within that fearful bubble.
Okay, but you're talking about something that's not necessarily germane to what we're talking about, because he's saying that it is like, Martians and stuff zipping around in our military's training areas. So and I'm saying it's future humans. Okay. Right. So in order for Tony's hypothesis to be right, that it's Martians or it's other aliens or more advanced civilization, then what he's saying is that all these highly advanced civilizations just get off on flying around in our military's training areas.
Well, I mean, we're sending spacecraft out to study other planets, right? And we've got one at the edge of our solar system right now, a probe, right? What is it called? The
Voyager,
Voyager 2, Voyager 1. So what's a more advanced civilization is not going to do the same thing a lot better than we can.
But I mean, that's a lot of sightings just specifically in our military's training areas.
Well, I mean, they may have been here already for thousands of years,
Yeah, I think they are here at all times at one time.
I don't have any problem. I don't have any problem. They may have even been here before we evolved or were created. I hate to say evolved because I think we were created, but
we were definitely created.
In any event, even if there is an argument for evolution, the ingredients and the code for our DNA was placed.
Well, I think we're an exoplanet colony. I really do.
I want to interject.
I agree. I'm with you on that one.
One minute.
Are you really?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
We've been going for 2.5 hours. This is round 2.
We finally got to the really cool stuff. I'm sorry.
Okay, so let's keep
I didn't mean that,
Brad. Or we save the really, really cool stuff for round 3. I mean, it's up to you guys. I'm good.
No, it's whatever you want to do, man. I'm good.
No, I probably need to go in about 10, 15 minutes, but that is the kind of stuff. Because the reason I said that about interesting is because it's the kind of stuff I can talk about, but I can't. There's some things that a layman can't discuss because I don't have the training that you have, and the concepts are right there on the edge of what I understand. So the big picture stuff, like are we, are the future humans, or that kind of stuff, it is really interesting to me because I can talk about it.
How many sources of creation exist, though?
How many sources of creation? I think there's only one big creator.
So at the end of the day, it almost comes down to past and future, because it's all relative to the one source of creation, which is the creator. So either,
Well,
I mean, that might
this
be
is what
too
I'm talking about,
philosophical.
ingredients. Because if you're a creator and you have a master space and you blow the ingredients into a universe, then we're just late bloomers, right? Those other creations have already evolved to a certain point, to past that. I mean, that's just
There's
how
so
I
many
look at it.
dimensional levels. I mean, are you talking, right? When you're saying that, are you talking about our three-dimensional space with our version of time, or are we talking more about the greater picture, like Brad's talking about?
I'm talking about the fact that our universe, we just discovered another million galaxies, right? Did you read that article? They just,
I haven't read that one.
I
No,
mean,
but
yeah, there's just so many galaxies. This universe is so huge. There's no way we can even fathom how much life is in it.
that's why I like
Yeah.
the circling it back to the hummingbird almost. The idea of different, we're all in this proper time, right? But we have different dimensional levels within it. And when it comes to the Higgs field and creating the negative 246 gigahertz to push you towards the future or the past, I mean, it's just very interesting to me. I'm sorry, I got distracted. Yeah, I'll just be quiet.
Well, and
it's weird that it goes together. That's what blows me away, is that when you start,
yeah,
it's like, I mean, it's just
no, right, and it's a matter of I mean, it's just like it's science, right? It's a matter of what level you zoom into and analyze, right? If you go to the quantum level, all that builds up and it makes sense on the macro level, right? It's an amalgamation of the of the ingredients that the creators spewed into this universe.
Yeah,
but
I mean,
so,
the one thing is though, is that the only thing that and the reason that I feel like I can talk about this and say like it's plausible is because I built it. I put it in, I turned it on, and I saw it swing lighter. And so
I'm saying that's part of that's
yes.
a discovery that was made available in our creation.
Mm-hmm. Right? Yeah. So I mean, so I guess the only thing I would say is that, this, maybe that's wrong. Could be wrong. But then
probably not.
If you believe that UFOs there are really flying around, and so far, my sort of quantum echo theory, right? That part of it goes back in time, and there's a quantum remainder in the present and a quantum echo in the past. So far, the only comprehensive, reasonable theory that I've ever heard is the sonic gravity, like quantum echo theory. I've never heard anybody else even come up with anything that could possibly like do that. And so, when people talk about, plasmas and all this other kind of stuff, I'm still thinking to myself, dude, you're going to pancake yourself. I don't care how hot your plasma is or whatever.
Plasma is still sort of plasma is still sort of an earthly solution to.
Yeah, right? I don't get that. Yeah, I mean, I don't see it. I mean,
it's a low level.
But here, one thing. Can I tell you one thing? This is amazing. I started thinking, I did a podcast episode on this, but so did you ever see that one episode or that one sort of video? There's like an ICBM test going up, and there's like a UFO that flies around it and like beams it and then beams it and then beams it. And
I never knew if that was real or not.
I'm convinced it's real, and here's why. So now we talked about how if that's real, then that's a quantum echo. It's in the past, right? And so if that's right and it's a quantum echo, now if it flies, if it sees that thing, goes after it. Now, if it fires a light, right? And the guy who did it, I quoted him and everything. I put his audio in my episode. He said it was a plasma, like a heat beam. But here's the thing. So remember, the quantum echo is balanced by gravity, because you can't have something go back in time and add energy. So it can only go back as far as the tension in the Higgs field, that gravity field, that anti-gravity field balances and makes it a net zero in that time. So it has to go far enough back in time that all that mass is counterbalanced by the gravity. Well, so if you're zipping around and then you shine a flashlight onto that missile and you're shooting light into that time, that's energy. And the universe would have to counter that energy too.
So light would pass through the anti-gravity bubble.
So light, yeah. So light,
because you would think it would be curved, it would be diffracted somehow.
Yeah, it might be like a little warbled or something. That could be very possible. But if it's light going into that time, then it has to be counterbalanced with gravity too, because the gravity would kind of grab onto it. And so you would be shooting light, but it would also be gravity. So you're not just shooting light, the gravity has to cancel that. So that would be tons of gravity canceling that. And if you get tons of gravity, right? Gravity creates, and I did some research on this, but gravity creates pressure and pressure creates heat. And that's why he thought it was a plasma weapon, because it created heat. Because the gravity was there to balance the light, brought in a ton of gravity, and then also that gravity creates pressure and pressure creates heat. And so that's why it looks like a flashlight. It looks like that thing hit it with a flashlight. Like
that's why it almost looks fake, because it looks fake. It looks too simple. Fake. Yeah,
it's too simple.
The funny thing about that video is that the movement of that craft is almost not really doable, but it's more doable than right. So I don't, you know what I mean? It's almost like it could be an advanced craft that's not under some effect of like somehow I think at some point these craft have to become part of our existence, our reality, right? If they're going to land and they're going to walk out, gray aliens are going to walk out, down the ramp or whatever. They have to be converted back into matter somehow.
Well, here's what happens, I think, to balance that. And if I did an episode and I lifted this audio of this abductee, Kelly Cahill, which is like widely regarded as one of the most credible abductions in Australia, because there were like 3 people. It's called the Curse of the Madman. You should check it out, because I lifted her audio. I like totally quit, so it's like actual reporting. Well, there were like, this UFO landed and all these people got out of their car and they went to go check it out. And then all of a sudden they just got slammed, like blasted off their feet. And she talks about feeling like this weird, like gravity. It was a gravity wave that went through her, and it totally terrified her, which is really weird, because it sounds like gravity, when it is concentrated like that, like really messes with your consciousness, really messes with your head. Because she said she was just horrified in a way that she couldn't describe. When the gravity went through her, she was just horrified.
Yeah.
So it's probably got some kind of weird, happens in your brain when gravity anyway, bottom line is
you have to think.
And so,
sorry, go ahead.
So she gets abducted, or no, she doesn't get abducted, but she gets knocked flat. Like she feels this gravity, and then she just gets blasted off of her feet, and she's like, can't see anything or whatever. And then she heard these aliens, like, came up to her, and they were speaking English. She said they spoke English, and they're like, hey, somebody do something about her. Anyway, all of the women came away with these like marks in their guts, and they all had a terrible problem, like menstrual problems and everything, but it's all like medically documented, and that they had that, like, those issues and stuff. And so like I'm thinking like, oh, we screw up our DNA or whatever, and they're taking like genetic material and samples from people in the past who before they took the vaccine or whatever. So anyway, bottom line is that but when you think about what my theory is based on Kelly Cahill. Think about my theory. So I'm saying they're zipping around, their mass is in the past, right? So if they land, right? If they land and turn that field off, what happens? First of all, their mass renormalizes. So everywhere in that field, right? There's no mass, there's no nothing, there's no anything. all of a sudden that mass comes back. Now, you just added a ship full of mass to this time. So what comes with it to balance? So it's the only thing that can be released into this time to balance the mass that just arrived.
A gravity wave.
The gravity shock.
Gravity wave goes out, terrifies it, right? Now, I listen, it's called The Curse of the Madman. It's like 1.5 years old.
I'm definitely going to check it out.
Yeah.
So this gravity wave goes through her. That makes perfect sense with my theory, right? Now you're massless, right? But all of a sudden your mass comes back. And now think of all that air that was where your mass wasn't. And now your mass renormalizes and it shoves that air out. It shoves that air out of where that volume was. And that's where that blast pressure wave came back, because when your mass renormalizes, it's going to displace whatever was there, because they're, because it's like massless. So now you have the reason for the gravity wave, right? You have the reason for the blast. And it's just like, I hear things like this, and I didn't make up that shit with Killer.
It also explains the loss of time, in my opinion.
Yeah, it does. It absolutely does. There's all kinds of documented things where a UFO came over somebody and their clocks were like 15 minutes behind.
You could easily have time dilation if you're abducted and you're flying off near the speed of light and you're coming back. You would experience time dilation.
It's not necessarily that your physical creation is flying back. It's more the I talk about the fluid of creation before it's even like perceived by a conscious entity. And so now imagine your consciousness is made from delta to fast gamma. You have a being that's creating technologies in the future, meaning a denser realm of creation. It sends off a wave. It's going to push your consciousness into a less dense realm. You now experience time in a different fashion. Does that make sense to you?
I mean, your language makes sense to me. The way I see it is you create an anti-gravity bubble. Now you're disconnected because your Higgs string, right? Remember, Higgs is what leashes the matter and energy to our instance of time. Well, when that's zero, everything in there ain't leashed to our time from the Higgs field. So it's not time that's holding you there. It's actually, I think, the strong nuclear force that's like, I'm not going to let go of you. And so I think that's why you don't move. But there's no time flowing now. There's no space time that's blowing through the hologram to change it, and that's what I think time is. I think it's space time blowing through the surface of the hologram. But if we've drawn that little circle and we've essentially detached that little circle from the flow of space time, so that's why I think the clocks are all slow for 14 or 15.
That's where I want to relate it back to your Faraday disc. Which is perfectly circular. You've surrounded it with magnets, right? You've created a bell curve essentially of electric potentiality.
Okay.
So now when this object is moving through space-time in different angles, different directions, anyone existing within a layer of a relative frame of motion will either be pushed out from this field that's being moving around or sucked inward. So that's why I think people lose time, is because they're being pushed, meaning that not necessarily their physical body, but their consciousness, the waves that exist between delta to fast gamma, are being pushed outward, because it's all about that frame rate. And so when you have one of those crafts get next to you, your consciousness is literally pushed outward. You now have a slower snapshot of reality.
Okay. If you get close to a quantum echo, though, you get just destroyed. You get shredded by gravity. And I did an episode called That's What Cattle Mutilation Is. That's why cattle get mutilated when they get too close to a quantum echo, is because it's wrapped in gravity, and gravity creates heat and it creates pressure. And that's why you look at those cows that get too close to those UFOs, they're completely exsanguinated. All of their blood is flash boiled. They're totally pancaked and
higher
just crushed. Well, I just think it's gravity and heat from the pressure, and that flash boils the blood, and that, just totally ragdolls them. And that's why, they might get stuck to the gravity field, and that's why like people see like craft go up and like cows dropping and stuff, because they're just falling. I'm telling you, if you check out some of those episodes, if you're catching what I'm throwing, you'll probably go, even if you don't agree with it, like even if you don't think time travel is possible and all that kind of stuff, at least I think it's hard to come away and say that's impossible. Like I'm
not saying time travel is impossible. I just look at it more of a dilation or displacement than.
Yeah.
Right.
But then, like people that remember, like Gary Nolan, I did one called Quantum Fallout, and Gary Nolan got brought in by the CIA to figure out why everybody's getting sick, why people were getting sick and all that stuff from looking at these UFO parts. Well, we know, the bismuth, magnesium, zinc is the hull material that melted off, right, of some of those crafts, and it gets dropped as like slag. Why? Because it's an anti-gravity field and it's hot. And if it starts to close in, it could melt the hull of the craft and it could drop off. But if your craft is massless, right, the part of the hull is massless. And if you're shooting microwaves through massless metal, right, you could fracture those atoms. You could pop those atoms if they're massless. You could pop those atoms. You could pinball those atoms. And I think that's why Gary Nolan was talking about abnormal isotopes, because when you're flying around in your craft and you're using microwaves to navigate and move around, if you're blowing microwaves through all that massless metal, you're probably pinballing all those atoms and you could be cracking them open. And the reason I came to that conclusion was that it's in an episode called Quantum Fallout. And it shows like an eyeball, but it's like a radiation eyeball. And he was saying that, these magnesium isotopes were like, like 89 and 11%, these different isotopes, 89 and 11. And then he said, but these craft had magnesium isotopes that were like 60, 20, and 10. Now, and he was just saying, 16, 20, and 10. And I was like,
you're talking about electron counts or
talking about neutron counts in the atomic structure of the magnesium,
creating the overall weight.
Yeah. And I was like, okay, and I'll just spoil it for you right now. I was like, he's fucking missing the boat. Okay. Sorry. Because 80, 11, and 9, which is in nature, that adds up to 100%. But 60, 20, and 10 adds up to 90.
And that's where you're missing the stuff.
Which means 10% of it, 10% of it is radioactive and decaying. And that's why everybody is getting sick at the CIA and whoever's handling that stuff, is because when you fly that quantum craft, you fracture that magnesium, you fracture that. And he even said in a different podcast that it wasn't just that the isotopes were different. The isotopes were different everywhere. They were not homogeneous. And now that makes perfect sense, because you're not shooting the microwaves through exactly the same spot and exactly the same hole of the exact part of that craft at all times. It's not even. You're going to swing it around. You're going to move here. You're going to move there. And so that's why the isotopes are variable everywhere. They're not homogeneous. They don't add up to 100%, is because when they're massless and you fire microwaves through them for propulsion, you're going to rupture them in different places in different amounts. And so it's those kinds of things when it's like you have these scientific measurements of how do you get isotopes, when in nature, in the Oort cloud, anywhere in the solar system, magnesium only comes in these 3 flavors. But when we look at the hull of this craft, there's, all kinds of different magnesium, and it's just totally destroyed, and it's not the right ratios. It's not in that. Well, it's because they get destroyed as you fly the craft. And to me, it makes perfect sense.
They experience entropy at an accelerated rate.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and you're just pinballing them, right? Yeah. You're just jengaing all the atomic structure of all that stuff. But you listen to Gary Nolan talk, he's trying to figure out how to make it. He's trying to, how do we make these weird isotopes? You don't make the isotopes. It's just a byproduct. It's just it's just an accident.
Well, we may be having Gary on in April.
Oh, man. Oh,
believe it or not,
I will be on my best behavior. No, anyway, man, I'm gonna be watching if you do, but definitely, because the thing is in all those podcast interviews he was doing about the isotope ratios and all that stuff, check it out. I actually put his audio in Quantum Fallout. There's an episode called Quantum Fallout. I put it in there, and it's like, dude, you didn't even notice. I said that. I was like, what is it? And I was like, don't listen to anything he says, just listen to the numbers. And it's like he didn't even pick up that the Jenga magnesium didn't add up to 100%, which means 10% of it was radioactive and decaying. And he never said that. I don't know if he just didn't catch it, but that's why all the people in the CIA are getting sick, is because they're handling radioactive material and they don't know it. They don't realize.
I guess at some point we can't detect all the isotopes, right? Necessarily.
Yeah, well, he couldn't detect. It only occurs 24, 25, and 26 neutrons in each atom. And he wasn't detecting. Obviously, he wasn't detecting. I don't know if they take the mass or whatever. He's not getting those ratios. Yeah. I mean, I don't know what equipment he uses and all that, but I know that the numbers he said did not add up to 100%. And I'm like, dude, come on. That's like the easy part,
Well, guys, it's been almost 3 hours, and I still have to go take a shower and get ready for bed because I have to get up early in the morning.
Oh, man, well.
I got to go take Alex to breakfast at like 8 o'clock in the morning.
Well, hey, thank you so much,
man. It's been awesome, Brad and Alexei. We'll have to get together again sometime. And
I call that the avalanche effect. And the avalanche effect needs to equal 100, not 90. So we'll keep it there for now, right? And so we can move forward to round 3.
Round 3.
In
That'll
the next,
be it.
Show.
That's it.
Totally.
So I want to thank everybody in the audience also for all the questions and comments. I tried to flash them all up. I might have missed a few, sorry, but tried to flash at least 1 or 2 from each person. And I appreciate everybody for hanging out. If you made this long, you actually deserve an award. And but we will see you next time.
I've got a 3D printed trophy for anyone.
But anyway,
thanks, sorry, and I will try to don't say bad words. Sorry, man.
I really don't mean to harp on that, honestly.
No, but it's
I think it's great when you use it for emphasis, right? Like you're emphasizing the point.
I probably shouldn't say anything, but
no, I had a battalion XO tell me that profanity is a weak mind attempting to express itself forcefully. So
well, and I'm not.
I don't want
to set myself up to judge other people.
But I mean, you've got a show, and obviously YouTube doesn't like it. So that's now I'm messing with your lunchbox. And
no, I don't care about the money. Honestly, I don't care about that. To be honest with you, I realize too that sometimes, like Alexei said, when you're trying to express a certain message, sometimes some words just don't work. That darn isotope,
that doesn't prove the importance of it, Yeah,
it doesn't. Yeah. And I know this. I work with I'm a general contractor, so I hear it every day. But that's the difference. When you hear every other word, they're not. It's sort of habit forming. It's not. They're not accentuating a fact like you were. It's just.
Well, I'm sorry. I'll definitely.
No, I actually have a lot of respect for you, Brad and Alexei, and I like you guys. I appreciate you guys coming. It's
same
expanding
time.
my mind, and that's why in our audience's mind. That was one of my goals is to expose people who watch my typical videos to something different and exciting and broad to expand their thinking. So I appreciate it.
Yeah.
And we will see you guys next time.